Hey, you made it. Hi, my name is Greg Gunn and welcome to Color for Creatives. Now to kick things off, I have a very important message for you. Color is visual magic. Understand it and new creative doors will open left and right. Leave it a mystery and you'll be missing out on one of the most interesting and important design tools at your disposal. Now, this is not your average color theory course, mostly because we're gonna have fun and hopefully you will remember it. Yes, we will spend some time covering theory, but we're also gonna spend a lot of time working on a project together. So this way you'll have some kind of practical examples about how to use this information in your day-to-day work. My goal for this course, and if I do my job right, is to get you to make better color choices, and hopefully a lot less arbitrary and random ones. By the end of this course, you'll learn the language of color and how to speak it, what colors pair well together and why, how to build your own color palettes, and how to apply all of this knowledge to your own work. Also, I'll show you a few of my handy tips for working with color along the way. All right, I think that covers the intro, right? So I am super excited to have you on board. Thanks again. And I think you're in for a real treat. So get used to this face because we're gonna spend some time together. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about what you'll need for this course. Now, if you want to get the most out of it, you'll want a few things on hand. The first thing you'll need is Adobe Illustrator or Adobe Photoshop, or at least something like that. And if you're on an iPad, you can use Adobe Fresco or Procreate. That's cool too. Basically anything with a color picker and you'll be fine. The second thing you'll want is a way to save color swatches. Now, if you're using an Adobe product, you're all set. And although it's not a deal breaker, it'll be a big help. Number 3, you'll want something to take notes with. According to science, if you write something down, you're a lot more likely to remember it. And I tend to listen to science, but that's just me. My point is, you paid good money for this course, so let's try to retain some of it. And the last thing you'll need is an open mind. Now, this may sound a little woo-woo, but color is all about emotion and storytelling. It's very mysterious and maybe magical. So keep an open mind as we get ready to delve into one of my favorite things in the whole world. Now I know what you're thinking. Who is this guy and why should I care? Well, joke's on you. We already have your money, but just in case, let me give you some context. For the last decade and change, I've directed, designed, and animated all kinds of things in all kinds of styles. Commercials, animated short films, zombie puppets, you name it, I've tried it. These days, you might find me on the Future's YouTube channel, talking about illustration, the power of color, or my dog, Lucy. But in my free time, I love to draw and play with color. So I've made it my personal mission to understand and master it. So yeah, you might say, I like color. And throughout this lovely course, I'm going to share everything I know about it with you. Now, before we do anything, let's talk about why color matters and why it's so important. Like music, color is a complex and subjective experience. It has a powerful influence over our behavior and a very strong effect on how we feel. In fact, color is the most important factor as to whether or not we will buy something. Just think about when you go to buy your clothes or a car. I like to think of color as magical. I really do, and I'll explain why later. I call this the brand rainbow. So whether we're aware of it or not, we are being influenced and even manipulated by color all of the time, through very deliberate efforts behind marketing, branding, and even interior design. Beyond marketing, and in far less creepy ways, one of my favorite things about color is how it can tell a story. And films are great at this. They use color to help communicate and build their narratives. Color tells us where and who to look at, and it can help define important character traits. Wes Anderson is a master at doing this, and you can spot his color voice in every film that he's made. So just look at each of these characters' outfits. What does it tell you about them? Color also tells us how to feel. And this opening montage from the film Up is a fantastic example of that. And if you didn't cry during this scene, you might be a robot. And look at this. Even if we were to remove the images of the film, the colors themselves tell a story when you put them in sequence. And color is also a great way to indicate who's good and who's evil. Color is such a powerful storytelling tool that Pixar uses what they call a color script to design their films. Here's the color script for the film WALL-E. And this was done by Ralph Eggleston. It's amazing, by the way. But when you look at it, you can get a sense of what the film will look like beginning to end just using blocks of color. Now let's talk a little bit about color psychology. Because some colors are associated with particular ideas or feelings, and they are very commonly used to try to influence our behavior. Traditionally, when you think about the color red, you might associate it with love or anger or even excitement, whereas blue might be considered to be masculine and competent or even corporate. But remember, color is subjective, and there are lots of factors that affect color psychology. Age, gender, culture, these are some of the big ones. For example, here in the US, pink is associated with girls and blue with boys. Now, I'm not saying I agree with this or think it's true at all, but it is a thing. Now, if we were to time travel back 100 years, we'd find the exact opposite to be true. Blue was meant for girls and pink was for the boys. And what if you have xanthophobia? Well, then you will be terrified of this next slide. And also, I'm sorry if you do have it, I couldn't help myself. So color psychology is always at work on you, but it is relative to you and your own experiences. Who you are, what you've done, and how you process the world all shape your own individual color psychology. That being said, there are some concepts that we are hardwired to assign meaning to, and nature is a wonderful example of this. Even if you've never encountered a black widow spider or a poisonous dart frog, you instinctively think, just by looking at them, hey, maybe I shouldn't f with that thing. There's even a word for this phenomena, aposematism. And yes, I had to Google how to pronounce that. My point is, color is a powerful storytelling and communication tool. And the goal for this course is to understand it, harness its magic, and then use it to your advantage. And also, while there are some popular ideas, color psychology is just as subjective as color itself. And while we're on the topic of subjectivity, I'd like for us to do a little exercise together. Take a moment and think about your favorite color. Think about all the other things that share that color. What are they? And how do you feel about them? Why do you think that is? Now, think about your least favorite color. The color you just can't stand. How does it make you feel? What other things does it make you think of? Okay, so that was kind of weird, right? I know. But isn't it interesting to really think about how color affects you? When we're young, we all pick our favorite color. And for some of us, that color changes over time. I like to think of it as an ongoing record of our experiences. For instance, I'm sure all of us have gone through a blue period. So, like, what is color anyway? Well, technically, color is light that's bouncing off the surface of an object and into our eyeballs, which sounds completely nuts when you stop and think about it. Maybe this will help. This is the visible spectrum. These are all the wavelengths us humans are able to see. And without getting too deep into biology, we're built to see more of the warm colors on the spectrum, like red, yellow, and orange, and far less of the cool. Also, around 4.5% of people are colorblind or deficient, meaning they see even less of that spectrum. Red-green color blindness is the most common and affects up to 8% of men and 0.5% of women who are of Northern European descent. So, sorry dudes, we are way more likely to be colorblind. But in the grand scheme of things, we really don't see much. And that's probably a good thing. I mean, who wants X-ray vision anyway? Now, the whole concept of color itself is debated. Is it a real physical thing? Or is it something our brains are programmed to make up from visual data? Well, it's kind of both, which is why I keep referring to color as magic. So let's look at this really famous example of what I mean. Remember this thing? That's right. The dress is an excellent study in that unresolved argument. So, what colors do you see? Is it blue and black? Or is it white and gold? How about now? And now? Context and individual perception play a huge role in how we see, which is why I love this fashion phenomena. We'll talk more about how colors interact in the next section though. And for the record, the dress is blue and black, which drives me absolutely crazy because I can only see it as white and gold. Here's another way to think about how we see color. We perceive different colors because an object's surface absorbs some of the wavelengths and then reflects the rest back to us. And that's pretty wild, right? This quote from the book, The Secret Lives of Color, sums it up quite nicely. The color we perceive an object to be is precisely what it isn't. If that doesn't blow your mind, then I just don't know what to do. Okay, science lesson over. Colors don't exist in a vacuum, and in our convenient digital age, we sometimes forget that. You see, our perception of a color changes depending on its context and what other colors are in proximity. Here's a fun example. Which square is darker? The one on the left or the one on the right? If I were to bet, I'd put my money that the one on the left is darker, right? Wrong. Because of the colors surrounding them, the square on the left looks a lot darker than the one on the right. But taken out of context, we can see that they are exactly the same color. And here's an example of how value can mess with our brains. Now the long rectangle appears to be darker on the left and then gradually get lighter as you move right. Right? Wrong again. It's just one value the whole way. But the gradient behind it tricks our minds into thinking otherwise. Are you starting to believe in this magic? Okay, so we know the context of a color changes how we perceive it in a major way. It's almost like an optical illusion. And that makes working with color kind of tricky, but also kind of awesome. So let's look at how you can use this to your advantage. Here's a classic painting by Thomas Gainsborough, The Blue Boy. So let's just take a moment and look at this painting. You can see for the most part, it's pretty dark, and except, there's this dominant figure in the center who's wearing what I can only imagine is a bright baby blue velvet suit of some sort. It's not a very colorful image overall, except for that darn blue suit. And then there's, a little pink on his cheeks and some red on his lips. But everything else kind of like falls flat. But these colors do look very, very bright. However, I'd like to test that theory. So let's sample these colors to really see what's going on. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a new layer over here in Photoshop, okay? And then I'm going to hit B to go to the brush tool, right? Now I have my brush here like this, okay? And we're gonna use the color sampler in Photoshop. And the easiest way to use that and do what we're doing is if you're on the brush tool and you hold Option, like with this, you can see that the little cursor changes to the eyedropper when you're holding Option, okay? So we're gonna use that to sample a color, right? And then we'll make a little swatch for it right here. Okay, so let's start with the brightest colors we can find. So I'm gonna start with his lips right here because this looks like a pretty bright red. So I'm gonna sample it and then I'm gonna make a little color swatch right here. And then maybe I'll pick up some pink from his cheeks and then we'll put that here, okay? Now, the really colorful part of this painting is obviously the blue. So I'm gonna try to look for the most kind of bright blue I can find. So I'm gonna sample maybe something like over here, okay? I'll put a little mark there. And then maybe, oh yeah, this looks like it's really, really blue down here. So I'm gonna go in here and get like this, maybe this. Okay, some more blue. And then what else? There's like a really bright blue down here by a shoe. Okay, so I'll put that over here. And yeah, okay. I think that's a good place to start. You know, just for fun, let's pick up this like white on his scarf too, okay? We'll get that. We'll put it right there. All right, so we have some color samples. Now what I want to do is I want to look at these colors and study them, but out of context of this painting. Because if we look at the painting, we're like, wow, what a bright blue. His cheeks are so pink, his lips are so red. Everything looks like really bright and saturated. But let's see for ourselves. So what I'm going to do is go down here into the layers panel, and I'm going to go and say make a new solid color. And that's down here in this little kind of circle thing. New solid color. And then I want to make something that is completely neutral gray. So you basically want to put it all the way to the left and somewhere in the middle. And if you want to be really precise, over where it says H, S, and B, you just want to put 0 and 0 and then 50%. And that makes a perfectly neutral gray. And then I'm going to drag that underneath our color swatches so we can kind of just look at them in isolation. So let's move a couple things around here, and then we're going to zoom in and let's see what's really going on. Okay, so if you were to just look at these colors on their own, they don't look terribly vibrant. Like they're colorful and you can tell the difference between them and gray, but they're not like, wow, that's so blue, that's so red and vibrant, wow, that's crazy. And this is where the whole like context thing really comes into play. But let's kind of look at these for their data, if you will. So I'm gonna go with like, let's pick this, maybe this blue right here, right? And then I'm gonna open the color picker here. And I just wanna see where it falls in the color picker square, okay? So left and right is how saturated it is, and up and down is how bright and vibrant it is, right? So this blue, which was the dominant color in the whole painting that we're like, wow, so blue. Look at it, it's actually almost gray. It's really dark. Actually, it's like 50% gray, so it's the same value as our background. It's only 43% saturated, right? Like we can clearly tell that it's blue, but outside of the painting, it really just kind of looks like this very, very dull blue. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so let's take a look at, let's go with the red, okay? All right, so this red, yeah, it's a bit more saturated. It's a bit brighter too, okay? So we can see that it's kind of like, it's less in the middle and more up here at the top. But even then, it is not like a very vibrant red. It's almost kind of like a, I don't know, like a bloody red or like an orangey browny kind of red. It doesn't have the same like vibrance as you would think like, oh, and his lips were bright red, you know? Because like, look at that by comparison. This almost looks brown. Okay, and then how about the white over here? Which we can see it's definitely not white. It's almost like a kind of like yellow. But if we open it up, yeah, it's kind of yellow. And it's definitely not pure white. Like it's nowhere near it actually. It's pretty bright, but there's a lot of color in it still. And there's even some like darker values in it. So my point is, you may see a piece of artwork and marvel at the color and be like, wow, it's so bright and blue and crazy, and how'd they do that? But if you take those colors and you sample them and you look at them out of context, you'll see that these are actually kind of like pastel-y or dull, and you wouldn't think that these colors would make up such a like vivid looking figure. So one other thing we can do, right, is let's kind of sample the background and change the context of this, right? So we still have our gray, but I'm gonna pick one of these other like darker colors, maybe just a color around him, maybe like this, sort of like an olive looking color. And then I'll make another solid color and put that behind our color swatches and see what that does. Okay, so zoom in a little. All right, so these look a little brighter, actually. They look a little more vivid, at least the blues do, right? So look at this blue right here, as opposed to over gray, and the blues just kind of like almost start to fade into the gray a little bit. So you can see with very deliberate and careful color choices, you can really make sort of what are pastel looking colors into this very vibrant and rich painting. And that's kind of one of the tricks a lot of painters and illustrators will use, is that You'd be hard pressed to find something that uses 100% pure black and 100% pure white. There's always a little bit of color and a little bit of kind of value play at work here with how the colors bounce off each other and exist relative to one another. Another important point to consider when you're using more than one color is the ratio and balance between them. Striking the right balance will have a significant effect on how your artwork is received. Too much color can easily become a carnival. Not enough might be boring. So what do you do? Here's an illustrated pattern I made as an example of how color balance works. Now this piece uses a complementary color harmony of red and green, and also a couple of neutral tones like dark gray and beige. The red is by far the most dominant color here. It's bright and bold and really kind of demands your attention. Meanwhile, the green is muted and really kind of takes a backseat to the red. And overall, it feels like there's a nice balance going on. But what if the green were just as vibrant as the red? Here's a modified version. Now I've added a lot of saturation back into the green, which is bringing it way forward. But now there's this violent clash between it and the red. And it feels like the green is just overpowering everything. The red has lost all of its presence, and even worse, our eyes struggle trying to figure out where to look. This doesn't work nearly as well as the original. And you know what? That makes me sad. All right, let's end this section with some light homework. So here's what I want you to do. Choose an image from an artist you admire and that you think uses color really well. Then bring that image into Photoshop or whatever it is you're using and start sampling the colors from it, just like we did with the painting. Build little swatches for them on a new layer. And then lastly, put a 50% gray background on another layer underneath them. Look at how bright they are, how saturated they are, and where they fall in the color picker. How different do they look out of context? This is a great little exercise you can do with just about any artwork you find. It's like getting a peek into the artist's mind while they were putting them together. And it's especially cool when you color pick from old master paintings. It's just amazing to see what they were doing. Pretty neat stuff. Okay, so let's talk value. And I'm not talking about value-based pricing. You can ask Chris about that. I'm talking about the lightness and brightness of a color. On a scale of black to white, how bright is a color? And then how does that affect how we perceive it? As you can see, each color has a unique inherent value or brightness. Now, by nature, we perceive some colors brighter and some darker. But let's look at this in more practical terms. Here's an illustration of mine. It's using green, blue, yellow, and a touch of red. Now, I can see what's going on, but it's really tough to focus on any one thing. My eyes are just wandering around the image kind of aimlessly. Now, you might find yourself in a similar situation where your colors just don't look right and you're not quite sure why. Whenever I find myself here, I stop and do a value check. This is a super handy trick that I use all the time in my own work. Now let's look at this again, but in just black and white values. So in order to do that, what we're going to do, and I'm using Photoshop here, we're going to go to the layers panel, and then we're going to go all the way down to the bottom here where you have this like row of icons. We're going to click the little circle guy and go up to hue saturation and then click that. So that'll create a new hue and saturation adjustment layer, and just make sure that it's at the very, very top of the layer stack. So it should be above everything else. And under the properties tab of that hue and saturation layer, if we have it selected here, okay, I want you to find saturation, and right now it should say 0. But we want to look at this in black and white so we can check out the value. So we're going to take the saturation tab and we're going to slide it all the way to the left here to -100. And now our image should be in black and white. And look at that. It's just a big kind of gray blob, and there's no contrast whatsoever. So this is tough to look at in black and white because there's like no white, there's no dark. It's just kind of bleh, just gray. So I'm really not surprised that this doesn't look very good in color. Now you might be saying to yourself, Greg, this is a course about color. What's with all the black and white? And I get it. It seems counterintuitive, right? The thing is, contrast and value are just as important as hue and saturation. And here's a great example of why that is. This is a revised version of the illustration. Easier on the eyes, right? Now let's do another value check. So much better. Wow, look at all that contrast. So now you can see that there are very dark parts, very bright parts, and plenty of shades of gray in between. And go ahead and insert your own 50 Shades of Grey joke here. I know you want to. Now I scooched some of the hues around by a little bit, but the biggest difference between these two images is value. And you can clearly see that when you do a value check. As you can see, value can make or break how colors work together. My general rule of thumb is that if it doesn't look good in black and white, chances are it's not going to look much better in color. So if you ever find yourself in a color predicament like this, do a value check. It's your friend. Now, value becomes exponentially more important when you're dealing with typography, especially on screens. By no stretch of the imagination is this a typography course, although we do offer a great one if you're interested. But I do want to take a moment and just highlight why you should pay extra close attention about how color, type, and value work together. Here's one of my favorite quotes. It's a great quip, but damn, that is hard to read. The colors just seem to vibrate against each other, and it's really kind of tough to focus on. So let's make an adjustment to the value and see what happens. Much better. When considering color for typography, your top priority should always be legibility. Because if you can't read it, or if you strain reading it, then who cares what color it is? And speaking of straining, I'm a big fan of dark mode. Don't at me, okay? But when you're reading pure white over a pure black background, that can put a lot of strain on your eyes. But if we soften the black a touch and dull the white ever so slightly, this Wikipedia article about chilaquiles becomes much more enjoyable to read. All right, so now, hopefully, you understand the value of value. And it's time for some homework. So here's what we're gonna do. I want you to start by opening a project of yours. Now it could be old, it could be new, you could still be working on it, it doesn't matter. Just make sure it uses more than one color. So then you're gonna open that in Photoshop or whatever it is you're using, and I want you to do your own value check on it. Next, I want you to go into each layer and start adjusting the values. Think about where you want the most contrast and where you want the eye to focus. And while you do this, be sure and toggle the hue and saturation layer so you can see what's going on with the color. Lastly, I want you to give yourself a pat on the back. Because hey, you were already better with color than when you started. So good job. Okay, if you don't have your own project to work on, you can download my example file in this module and start playing with the values to see how it works on your own. Okay? Have fun. All right, let's get some basics out of the way. Now there are two color modes that you need to know and understand. The first one is called additive. Now additive is a light-based color mode and probably the one you're most familiar with. So as colors overlap, they become brighter and brighter and ultimately get very close to white. So RGB is additive and it's used on just about every screen we enjoy staring at so much. Now additive color is great for bright, saturated, and even neon colors because it has a very wide range. The second color mode is called subtractive, and it's pretty much the opposite of additive. Subtractive is a pigment-based model, whereas colors overlap, they become darker and darker, getting closer to black. Think about like ink and paint and dye. CMYK, also known as four-color process, is subtractive and widely used for printing. You can find subtractive color in any real-world material like ink and paint and in most printing techniques. Isn't it kind of cool that we have this world of color available to us anytime we'd like? But it wasn't always that way. You see, some of the colors that we've become so cavalier about choosing have quite the dark past. Take Tyrian purple, for example. And trigger warning, this might get a little gross for some of you. This reddish purple dye was first discovered by the ancient Phoenicians. Now, in order to produce the color, our old friends had to collect a small liquid secretion from sea snails, much like the one pictured here. And that was no easy task. You see, it took about 12,000 snails to produce a little over 1 gram of dye. So yeah, they murdered a ton of snails. And the post-snail killing process involved dumping them into a huge vat and then letting them decompose. It was such a smelly endeavor that it was relegated to the furthest outskirts of town. And due to its labor and sensory intensive process to create, Tyrian purple dye was extremely valuable. And of course, reserved for royalty and only the most wealthy of folks. But I digress. So, when do you use RGB and when do you use CMYK? I'm glad you asked. In general, if you intend your design or artwork to be viewed on a screen like the internet, in an app, in a video, or on TV, then take the RGB road. Because all of those mediums are light-based and you will have a full range of bright and vibrant colors to work with. However, if you intend to print your artwork, then CMYK might be a better option to start with. CMYK doesn't have as wide and vibrant a color range as RGB, so you want to make sure you design within its parameters. You can, of course, convert between the two. But if you start in RGB and you're using really bright and vibrant colors, you will lose some of that when you convert it to CMYK. One last thing, and this can get a little confusing and yes, very nerdy, but let's talk color space. When you're working in RGB, you want to make sure that your color space is set to sRGB. It's the most commonly used across screens. Now there are others like Adobe RGB and P3 like in Procreate, and they have a much broader spectrum, but when you bring those images over into sRGB, the colors just tend to dull. And I run into that all the time when I work in Procreate and then I bring it into Photoshop. So in my opinion, stick with an sRGB color space for most things. Now some of these terms I'm throwing around might be brand new to you, or maybe you've heard of them but have no idea what they are. Totally okay. Which is why I put together the color glossary for you. Your homework for this section is to download and read the color glossary so that you know what the hell I am talking about later in this course. Also, you can impress friends and strangers at parties with your vast color vocabulary knowledge. Wow! As creative people, we tend to admire and then compare ourselves to other creative people. For instance, have you ever been scrolling through the gram, found something that caught your eye, and then just said, how did they build that color scheme? And why does it look so good? Furthermore, do you then ask yourself, why do my colors suck so hard? I feel you. I really do. Pairing colors together can seem so difficult and mysterious. Why do some work so well together while others just don't? Look, I'm not your dad. You can do whatever you want. But there are some established color schemes that have been proven to work very well together. And that's what we're going to cover in this section. So get ready to get harmonious. Let's start with something easy and talk about monochrome. Now, monochromatic color schemes are made from a single base hue. And you might think that monochrome means black and white, but it doesn't. Mono, one, chrome, color, one color. And that can be any color we want. This painting by Jeff McFetridge is a fantastic example of how much range you can get from a single color. In this case, blue. And here's a figure by one of my favorite artists, Cos1. He uses tints, shades, and tones to create this dynamic set of values based on a single red hue. All right, so let's turn it up a little bit and talk about complementary. Now, complementary color schemes use two hues that are located directly across from each other on the color wheel. They're like visual opposites, and they make things stand out, but can often be quite jarring to look at. In the film Her, Joaquin Phoenix wears bright red while he searches for love. But in this scene, the world around him is green and dull, clashing directly with his jacket, and by extension, his romantic quest. You'll find complementary color schemes used all the time in logos. The high contrast colors bouncing off each other, creating a visual friction and excitement. Perfect for a logo. All right, let's take this complement to the next level and talk about split complementary. Now, a split complementary color scheme is a variation of the standard complementary one. You have one base color, but instead of an opposite color, you pick the two secondary ones that surround it. And basically, it kind of looks like a stretched out rectangle. This illustration from Invisible Creature is a great example of split complementary. You get this teal green paired with a bright orange and a vibrant yellow. There's still plenty of contrast, but it's not nearly as jarring as a regular complementary color would be. Here's another example from The Beast is Back. Now he's using two neutral colors, black and white, to help balance everything out. So you get this high contrast from the green, orange, and purple, but the neutrals help soften and make it all kind of work together. All right, let's get back on the same page here and talk about analogous colors. So analogous color schemes use colors that are all right next to each other on the color wheel. Think of them like color neighbors. They usually match really well together and help create a serene and kind of comfortable design. Now, I could talk about Mary Blair all week, but I will do my best to stick to the script. However, if you want to see a master of color, Google her. She is amazing. Anyway, in this It's a Small World illustration concept, she uses purple and blue together, along with white and black neutral, to create a cool and dark illustrated world. On the other side of the color wheel, Ollie Moss used an analogous color scheme in his poster design for the game Firewatch, which is a fantastic game and you should totally play it sometime. What's interesting about this color palette is that it starts with a deep purple and moves color by color almost halfway across the wheel, nearing its complement. Pretty cool. Up next is what they call triadic. Now, a triadic color scheme is a lot like split complementary, except each color is equidistant from each other on the wheel. The primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, are a triadic color scheme themselves, as is the Man of Steel. Now, this type of color harmony is vibrant and usually works best when there is a single dominant color. Here's another triadic color scheme designed by the man himself, Paul Rand. This is from a magazine cover from 1955. Super cool. I love this color palette. And you can see that red is by far the most dominant color here, but it's surrounded by a lot of white neutral space with a little splash of blue and a little bit of yellow. All right, here's where things get real wild and crazy. Tetradic and square color schemes use 4 colors, creating a rectangle or square shape that connect them all. Think of it like 2 sets of complementary colors all being used together. Here's another Paul Rand layout using the tetradic color scheme. A palette with this many colors in it works best if you let one color be dominant. In this case, the most used color is yellow, but you'll notice that there is also a lot of white neutral space separating each color. Now, I warned you, I was a huge fan of Mary Blair, so here she is again. Except this time it's for her work on the classic Disney film, Alice in Wonderland. Here, Mary uses a tetradic scheme to create visual tension on screen. So on the one side, you have Alice wearing all blue, and on the right side of the screen, you see Tweedledee and Tweedledum decked out in red. So remember the question we asked at the very beginning of this section? Why do some colors work so well together? Well, now you know. So the next time you're scrolling through your feed and you stop to say to yourself, my, what lovely colors, I wonder how they did that. Think back to this video, because I'll bet you can figure out what color harmony they're using. Which brings me to your homework. Think of this like a color scavenger hunt. I want you to look at your favorite artists and pick out 3 different images from 3 different artists. Ideally, they will have very different color palettes, so try to look for that. Now bring those images into Photoshop, sample the colors you see, and then try to identify what color harmony they're using. This is the first step in understanding how to pair colors together, and subsequently, how to build your own color palettes. So start by studying what you like, and then learn how to do it your way. Welcome back. New video, new day, new shirt. So enough with the talk. Now that we understand what color is and we know how to approach using it, it's time to do something. I made this sketch specifically for this course, and over the next few videos, we're going to build our own color palette and bring it to life. If you'd like to follow along, you can download this sketch and develop your own color palette alongside me. Otherwise, I suggest looking for an older project of yours that you might want to change the colors of. Also, feel free to just hang out and watch. That's totally cool too. The first step in developing a color palette is having a concept in mind for it. But what does that mean exactly? Well, again, like music, color is a storytelling tool that relies heavily on emotion to communicate. And that emotion can come in a variety of forms. Usually it's for evoking a very specific emotional response. Now, if I wanted you to feel happy and delighted, I might not have used this color palette. And as far as communication goes, there's a reason stop signs are red. And in our line of work, color palettes are often designed to establish brand recognition, a lot like this example. And lastly, Beyond function, a good color palette is an opportunity to make the world more beautiful. And as creative people, isn't that what we like to do? So with that in mind, you should always have a goal for your color choices. And the palette you build should support that goal, or at least connect to it a little bit. Now let's talk about how you do that. I like to start that process by giving myself prompts to work from. Words, phrases, moods, anything I think would help capture the essence of what I have in mind. I do this exercise because it helps me find and make connections between different ideas. Got my paper, got my trusty pen, I'm ready to brainstorm. So let's get to it. Now, when I look at this sketch, I'm gonna start by thinking like, what's in it? So I'm gonna write down, have some leaves, it's outdoors, wilderness, maybe even like the forest. And then what time of year is it? Is it like autumn or is it spring? What else? So there's a dog. It kind of looks like maybe they're going on a hike. It could be camping even. So I'll go down that road. Maybe they're in a national park, like Yosemite. I'll write down Joshua Tree. Even though it kind of looks like they might be in a more forest kind of place versus a desert. It's wilderness, outdoors, wildlife, adventure. Okay, so another thing to consider other than literally what I'm seeing there is what is the mood, you know, and that could be time of day or how do I want people to feel when they look at it. So I'm gonna write down inspired. I'm gonna write down sunshine, happy, breath of fresh air. There's no bad ideas. What else? I want people to feel motivated and maybe energized and I don't know, maybe even like exercise a little bit, cardio. They're on a hike. Okay, so I mean, you get the point. We have a good amount of kind of like phrases and prompts and ideas and themes and feelings. And what we're going to do is take all this stuff that we've kind of brainstormed and we're going to now use it to search and find reference. And I find writing down way more than you think you need helps because you can always run out of ideas very quickly. This kind of helps keep like new things rolling for me anyway. So, all right, so we've got our prompts here. Let's see, what did I write down? I wrote down leaves, outdoors, wilderness, forest, Patagonia, hike, camping, campsite, national park. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, wildlife, inspired, happy, motivated, energy. Plenty of things to work with. Cool. I think that's enough fuel for our searching for reference fire. So let's start. Once I have a handful of prompts that I'm happy with, I'll then use them to find color reference and straight up swipe it. Yes, you heard me. We're gonna steal some colors. But before we get into that, it's homework time. Your assignment, should you choose to accept it or not, is to brainstorm prompts for your color palette. I want you to write down words, phrases, feelings, abstract ideas, anything you think would help. And if you're struggling with what to do, think about how you want people to feel. What message do you want to communicate? All right, so steal might be too strong of a word in this situation, but in this video, I'm going to show you how I look for color inspiration and then use it to inform and build my own palettes. To start, I tend to look outside of the current design bubble. I'll spend time Googling photography, nature, food, textiles, vintage graphic design, basically anything that isn't in the contemporary design sphere on the internet. And this is all in hopes of finding something special and unique that I like. Pinterest is a great place for sourcing color inspiration, but you have to curate what you're looking at. It is way too easy to end up down a rabbit hole of looking at the same design images. This is called a book. Now, books come from trees, and they're kind of like the internet, except you will enjoy reading them. Also, they smell nice. So I love digging through old books and magazines to hunt for really interesting color schemes. But if you don't have a library at your disposal, you can also search for this stuff online and find some great references to help inspire you. Now, if you're more of an outdoor person, then you literally have the whole world to explore. There is so much fun color reference out in the real world. And to help you do that, there is a lovely little app I like to use called Adobe Capture. It's a free download, and all you really need is a smartphone and a Creative Cloud account, even the free one. This little thing, this is my lunch bag, believe it or not. I bring this in every day to well, carry my lunch and keep it nice and cold. But I thought this would be a good candidate for us to sample some colors from, because it's very colorful and it was right next to me when I thought of it. So let's use the app and start sampling this. First thing you're gonna wanna do when you open the app is you will see a big menu at the top with a variety of options. I want you to swipe all the way over to where it says colors. Adobe Capture has a lot of really interesting and cool things to do inside of it, but for right now, just focus on the color bit. So swipe over to color, and then if you tap the little camera icon, you'll get this cool color sampler thing going on. But basically what you do is just point it at something you want to sample the colors from, and the little kind of dots will move around and then stick to the color, and you'll take a photo. And not only will you get the photo, but it'll automatically generate a color palette at the top for you. So let's try it on our bag here real quick. So I'm just gonna set this up this way, come back a little bit, and then give it a second, locking it in, boom, and there we go. So that's Adobe Capture. Pretty easy to use, but handy if you're out about in the world walking around and you see like a cool textile or a rug or like some curtains or really anything, like maybe a cool sign or something, you just boom, 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 and then you have that palette. And what's even better and even more convenient is that when you hit save, it saves it to your Creative Cloud account. So then later when you go home and you open up Photoshop or Illustrator, you have that color palette that you sampled, and then you can drag it in and start using it right away. So pretty cool stuff, I think. Alternatively, you could also just take photos of stuff and then bring that into Photoshop and sample the colors. But my point is, you need a way to document what you find out there in the real world. Now, you might be saying to yourself, screw this, Greg, I'm just gonna go to one of those color palette generator sites and use that. And to that I say, go for it, because those sites are awesome. They are a great place to start. And I consider them to be just that, a starting point. Now, some of them might work out of the box for what you need, but I promise you will want to know how to adjust them to taste. All right, so here's something I found that I think would work for this project. It has the whole outdoor wilderness nature thing that we're going for, and also just look at it, it's beautiful. All right, let's get some color samples going. Now, I already have a document created here, but one thing I wanted to point out is when you're setting up your new document to sample colors, whether you're using Illustrator, Photoshop, whatever, just make sure that the color mode is set to RGB. Let's keep it easy for now and just kind of focus on screens and also maximize the amount of colors we can use. That's the only thing just to look out for. Now, I have our fun little image here, a park ranger stove and lantern fuel can from a long time ago. Looks kind of mid-century modern. Thematically, it works with what I'm thinking, and I like the color palette, and it's kind of interesting. So basically what we're gonna do is create a set of little swatches for ourselves that are pulled from this image here. Okay, I'm in Illustrator. I just made a square. You can see that it has a white fill and a black outline. I don't like that. I want it the other way around. So I'm gonna hold Shift, push X, boom. That little shortcut flips the color and the stroke outline. And then to get rid of the stroke, you can hit this little thing here, or you can just hit the / and there you go, done. Those are my Illustrator hot tips. There you go. And what I'm gonna do is just drag out a handful of these so we have some places to save our swatches. All right. And generally I like to start by picking an overwhelmingly large amount of colors to sample, and then kind of whittling it down and refining from there. So hopefully this is enough to hold our colors that we're going to sample. And basically we're just going to use the eyedropper tool in Illustrator. You push I and then boom, there you go. And we're just going to start grabbing colors and trying to kind of deconstruct the color palette from this image. So here we go. I'm just going to start grabbing things, and I'm not going to be too, I don't know, precious or careful about, what it is, where it's coming from. I'm just grabbing stuff, like no big deal. I just want to see what's in here. And then, decide what of it do we want to keep? What do we want to like kind of merge? Because I get the feeling we're going to find a lot of, similar colors, and we can just kind of scooch them together. So at first you'll kind of be like, oh, well, I think I ran out of colors to sample from. And that's not true. It just means you have to zoom in a little further. Like, look at this little like brown in his hat. I didn't even see that from out there. Okay, let's see. Let's sample this. Oh, let's sample this tan up here. I didn't see this. And maybe what else? We'll sample his nose. Well, that's weird. I just noticed this. He's holding the same fuel canister as is printed on the fuel canister. That's crazy. How funny. Okay. See, you zoom in, you see things you never would have seen before. Okay, so some of these colors might actually be the same. I'm just clicking around and grabbing and sampling just in case. So we'll grab all the stuff and then we'll kind of merge things later and figure out what we want to use. So I will just grab a few more, click around up in here. This is like a light gray, blue or something. Let's see, what about this kid's shoe? Grab that. And oh, there's like this like little red thing on the ground. Yeah, it's like an orange. Sure, I'll take that. What else? Let's get his nose. I don't know, it just looks black. That's fine. And are these fish? I don't know. Let's see what the fish are. Oh, like a peach. Okay, I think that's a good enough place to start. So here, we'll get rid of these last two. Right, so we've done sort of step one, which is bringing an image in, sampling all the colors from it. That's too many colors to work with. I think from here, what I would do is start organizing these by their hue, and then probably merging and deleting some. So let's just do that. So I'm going to, let's move greens down here. Okay, these are all within the green family here. I'm going to move these kind of like neutral, tannish skin tones up here. I'm going to start moving around reds. And then the darker neutrals up here. You don't have to organize them this way. I'm just like to be organized. So this is my little routine that I go through. It also kind of helps, look at, okay, how many hues do you really have to work with? And do you need to sample more? Like, we have a ton. I like, this is more than enough. But sometimes you'll go through an image and you might feel like, oh man, well, I really don't have that many colors to work with. Maybe you got to dig in there and really zoom in and find some more. Sometimes you have to click around, like in this red, and find, you can find some variations. You do you. Okay, so I'm gonna say this is that looks like a neutral to me. Okay, so it ain't perfect, but this will do. Now I think we can definitely simplify this a little bit. So these yellows are close enough. I'm gonna get rid of this one, And these two end greens are pretty close, so I'm just gonna drop this. I know they're not exactly the same, but these are pretty close in brightness and value, so let's get rid of you. These two look very similar, so let's get rid of this one. And I feel like maybe we can even get rid of this one too. Yeah, why not? I'm okay with that. These two reds look the same, so I'll get rid of you. And these are pretty close as well. So I'm gonna get rid of this one. Same goes for these two. I know this is a little duller, so I'm gonna keep the brighter one because I like it, and that's my decision. And up here, this looks like almost pure black, so I'm gonna get rid of that and keep this more charcoaly looking guy. Let's see. What else do we need to do? Are we good here? Do we feel good about this? I guess technically these would be red, right? So I'll put them up here. Sure, why not? Yeah, I buy that. Okay, so now we took this huge array of color that we initially sampled, whittled it down a little bit, organized it so it's a bit easier to look at and structure and see what we have working with, and went through and sort of just pruned the ones that felt a little too close in their value and hue, perhaps. So now, if we're looking at this, it seems like we have two different neutrals to work with, right? So this kind of like creamy white and like charcoal gray. We have a red, we have a really dark blue, we have like an orangey yellow, a nice green, and then we have a more like mustard yellow. That's a good palette. There's plenty of color to work with here. Yeah, so I think that's a good first step for, looking at reference that you like, that thematically makes sense, and, dissecting and deconstructing the colors. And now you have sort of this like base concept to work from. Now from here, I think what we would do is we would start to refine this a little more, do some color interaction tests to figure out like, how do these colors work together? Is there enough contrast? And then start to really kind of make the palette our own. But great first step. So here we go. So I went ahead and brought in a few more images from our reference and sampled those colors and whittled them down to what I think the bare essentials were. And I just wanted to show you, you don't have to do this many images, but the difference between, just doing two different things. So initially, we had, here, let's zoom in here, this kind of fuel canister, and we got this really vibrant kind of color palette pulled from it. But if we move over to this photograph of Yosemite, I believe it is, we get a much different palette, and it's just as vibrant and colorful, but feels very different. And if we move around and we look at some of these other ones, like this is a bit softer. We're getting some of the pink and maroon from the beanie, and like we get this cool like kind of fashion color scheme going on. And then this other photo from I believe is like a fine art piece. It's very, very muted. But that's really cool. And that might be something that maybe we want to head more toward. This is where the concept of, subjectivity comes into play, because all of these images thematically tie into what I want and the kind of like feeling I want to evoke. They're all kind of push a little different direction. Like the top left, well, it's from an illustrated fuel can from the 50s. So it has a bit of like quirkiness to it. The top right is a very realistic but hypersaturated photograph. The bottom left is a kind of synthetic, very muted palette. And the bottom right is just a little more natural and even kind of pastel-y. So, I'm looking right in the middle and I'm like, okay, which, any of these could work. but which direction do I feel the best about? What do I feel strongest toward? And that's a decision that I think is really up to you as a designer or creative person, is to give yourself some guidelines to work within, but then also be able to make an informed and kind of like a personal decision about what you think would work best. Okay, so after some very careful deliberation, I've decided to base our color palette off of this set right here. And the reason, other than I just kind of like this one the most, is, I think there's a nice variety of color and tone. And I don't know, I think we'll have a lot of options to work with for all the different kind of needs for our artwork. So we've got a decent little color palette going here, but we need to test it and refine it a bit to see if it'll really work for what we need. However, before we get into that, it is time again for homework. Your homework for this section is to find color reference that aligns with your concept. You can use the internet machine, find a cool book, or even go outside and experience some real life. Regardless of what you decide, I want you to find something you like and start sampling color. And don't overthink it, just document and sample. We've got a good base for our color palette so far, but we need to develop it and really make it our own. So remember those cool optical illusions from earlier? Yeah, we're gonna do some of that, because we need to see how these colors interact with one another and what needs adjusting and where. So let's get into it. It's time now to develop this a little bit, clean it up, refine it, and do some color interaction tests, as I like to put them. So first thing I'll do is let's get rid of this guy. I don't think we need him anymore. And I've also brought our artwork into the mix here. And we're not going to start coloring in things necessarily just yet. But I want to have this handy so I can have an idea about what colors might work for what places. So if we're looking at our artwork, there's a few kind of key things to point out here. So first of all, we have this kind of character in the center, and the dog, I'll count that as another character. And then we have the scenery, which is primarily like foliage, bushes, leaves, rocks, a tree back here, some things. And then lastly, the third piece is we have typography down here. So those are the three kind of components that I want to make sure they work together. The colors have some sort of harmony between them, but that, each one of these things kind of stands out and has its own sort of like tone, if you will. So with that in mind, I'm going to look at our colors again, and I think start just by dragging some copies of the things that I know I want to use out and kind of massaging those and molding those for now. So looking at our artwork, I'm going to want some green. I know that right now. So I am going to take this one, and let's take these two. Okay. And I think some of this brown here, I like that. And yellow. So this is kind of these like earthy tones that I'm thinking might work for, our background and all this kind of stuff. And then for the characters, I want them to pop. I want to make sure that they kind of, still work with the rest of the colors, but like they're not lost. I guess we could go complementary since we have like a kind of red or blue here. So let's pull out this red too, and then maybe this like light blue. The reason I'm kind of just selecting a few at a time now is because, chances are we probably won't end up using all of these colors because we don't need to necessarily. And this isn't like, okay, this is it, use these colors. We're going to work on these a little bit and really kind of like, I guess, tighten them up and make sure that they work well together. And the first thing I like to do with that is just start kind of like you know, putting them together and checking out like how they work. So here, I'm going to drag this over here, right? So we'll do that and then go over here. And then I'm actually I'm going to flip these. So we'll do this and this. Okay. And then this kind of, you know, it's a little easier to see things in context this way versus just looking at a swatch. And this will help us kind of dial in, you know, maybe the value or move the hues around or the saturation to make sure that all these kind of work together really well. And there's not going to be any weird, funky overlap of color. So I think I'll just put this guy here. And yeah, you know, we'll leave that. And we're going to change all these things. I'm just, you know, not too worried about what exactly I'm doing right now. Kind of move that guy out of the way. I just want to see how these colors are working together, how they're interacting. So this green and this green, they work pretty well. I feel like there's enough visual contrast there. I like how these look together a lot. That's cool. And I'm looking for contrast here. So, you know, if there's dark over light or light over dark, that I can distinguish between these two shapes. Like these look kind of similar. So I'm not sure, you know, like this is where we'll want to adjust things. So let's say we put these two colors next to each other. The values look kind of similar. I mean, you can still make out the little square in the center, the green one, but what would happen if we darkened it a little bit? And the way I'm going to adjust these colors and kind of fine tune them is by opening up the color tab here and making sure that it's set to HSB, which is hue, saturation, and brightness. And you should have this in any program that you're using. I know Photoshop has it as well. But this will help us dial in and look at the color based on its properties instead of just, you know, like adding RGB. Like you can do it this way, but it's a little more intuitive this way. So I know I want the color darker. I just want to start there because it's super saturated. Look, it's 98%. That's very, very saturated. So what if we darken it a little bit and try to give it a bit more contrast between these two? Okay, so that's a little better. And I'm sort of just going to jump around and move between these colors and just push and pull them a little bit and see if I can make them a bit more dynamic. Okay, so this brown's kind of nice. So it's around there and there. It's pretty bright too. What is this one at? It's at 100 brightness and like 50. Okay, so what if I were to make this one a little more saturated? Let's see what happens. Okay, I did that and it's good. It gets a little close to this, but I don't mind it too much. Although I'm gonna bring it back down just a little bit. So I think before, if I undo a couple times, it was at 54, so it's really pale. You know, I don't mind that so much. I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it as is. Okay, let's look at these two greens and see if we can get them to be a little more dynamic. Okay. This one is at, so I'm really just kind of focused on brightness right now. So it's 63. So what happens if we were like really brighten it? Okay, so it gets significantly brighter. Here, I'll make this guy the same. Okay, that's a little more high contrast there. Okay. I don't mind that so much. What happens when we combine these two? Ugh. It's kind of I don't know. I don't love that combination. Let's see how the previous ones look. Okay, well, it's better than this. You see the original color, there's like no contrast here. This is 63 brightness if you look over here, and this is 77, so they're very close. Okay, those work a little better. What happens if we make this light? Okay. Yeah, these are pretty bright together. And maybe that's okay. Not all of the colors have to be like exactly right together, you know? And we're also just kind of looking at our base colors here. This is not like the end all be all. We can expand this a little bit. But, you know, overall, do these colors seem like they're working well together? And I don't know. I think they look pretty good. Here, we'll change this back to the dark green. And what else do we want to do? Let's try dark green in this, see how that works. Ooh, I really like how these look together. You get this kind of warm, and then green starts to go a little cool. These look really nice. Let's see, let's change this to brown, see what happens. Yeah, I like these together also. I think that's enough contrast. So we're starting to hone in on, you know, I think on this kind of like color scheme for the background here. I like the way that things are interacting. This is just sort of like a visual test, just to make sure, you know, are these going to jive? Are these starting to work together? And I think they are. Let's see what that. Oh, that's the same one. Yeah, these work together really nicely. So does this. Yeah, that's okay. All right, I'm cool with this. I like these as the base colors here for the kind of background. So, all right. What else do we got? So let's take a look at this kind of red and blue. See what's going on here. I'm gonna get rid of these guys. And remember, I'm making a copy, so I always keep my originals over here so as not to lose them entirely. Okay, so you know what? Here, let's make new swatches for these guys up here, and I will do this. I'll just copy these, and then we'll say dark green, light green, dark brown, and it's kind of pale yellow. All right, so now we can just sort of reset. So we have those saved up there. I'm just gonna change these over here. We only have 2 colors to work with, so it's a little easier. And then we'll make these ones red, and we'll do the same kind of thing. So both of these look really dark. And there's okay contrast, but I don't know. The red looks really dark, and the blue, they both look kind of dull. I want to have a little more, I don't know, vibrance and brightness to them. So I think I need to pick one of these to be like the color that's really going to pop, and the other I think it's okay if it's a little more muted. So I'm going to go with the red being the color that I want to pop. So I'm going to try to brighten it and then see what happens. So here, let's make it much brighter. I'll give it a little more saturation. Okay, so it's kind of tough to see against that blue. It's not great. I'm gonna get rid of these because I realize I don't need all 4. Okay, so what can we do with the blue here? Maybe, so we know if we look at its brightness is 80. So that's sort of just, you know, the value. And the blue is 58. So we can either make the blue much brighter like this for contrast, or much darker for more contrast. It starts to go kind of green. I don't know, maybe that's okay. Let's go with the brighter blue for now. And then, yeah, so that's a bit easier on the eyes that way. Let's see how this looks inverted too, just to see. Okay, yeah, so I think we have enough contrast here. I might take a little of the saturation out of the blue. Yeah, that's a little better. They're not fighting as much. Okay, so the reason this works, these two kind of work together, is if we look at the brightness, the B, right? We see that the red is at 80, the blue is at 89, so it's significantly brighter than the red. It's also way less saturated, whereas the red is at 80. That's way more saturated. So you have these two things kind of like in very different places on the kind of brightness and saturation spectrum. So you know what? It's not going to be perfect, but that's good enough for now. So let's save these over here. So we'll get the red, bloop, and we'll get the blue, and bloop. Okay, cool. Okay, so what else do we want to grab while we're here? You know, I do like these kind of darker blues. So, and maybe like this peach red. So let's copy these, bring them down, and we'll do the same kind of thing here. See what happens. Ooh, I already like how those look together. And let's try this with this lighter red. Okay, so man, these look really good together. I'm like, do I need to adjust it at all? There's plenty of contrast here. And even between, like, you know, the two blues, you can see there's really nice contrast. So we might be okay there. This one, on the other hand, this isn't looking great. Okay, let's try adding some saturation to it. See what happens. Okay. Better, but it's getting to be a little too close to this red. So what if we go the other way and we pull more saturation out and we make it brighter? So it's not working as well with the blue, right? So we can see whatever it is we're doing isn't working, because these are both just too bright. Now, if we were to put the red here, okay, that starts to work better. And if we were to put the dark blue here, yeah, that works pretty well too. So when you're doing this, you may also find that certain colors work together and certain ones don't. And that's okay, you know? So this kind of peach-ish color works with the red, works with the dark blue, not so much with the light blue. So maybe we just keep that in mind. It doesn't mean we don't have to use it. It just means that, you know, it's for special occasions, or just don't put it too close to this other blue up here. So here, let's do this. We'll save these last two swatches. Okay, so we'll get the blue, and we'll get this peach color, and okay. So this can kind of be our background here, and this can kind of be the other things. Characters, typography. You know what? We need some sort of like neutral color in here. And by neutral color, I mean a color that's not necessarily, you know, like going to stand out. It's something that'll kind of work with all of these colors. Usually like a dark gray, a light gray, a beige, a white, something like that. I don't like to use pure white or pure black. I think it's much more interesting. You know, like this blue might serve as our black, as we find out. But maybe we just grab a couple of neutrals to be safe. You know what? Let's just grab one for now. We'll grab this kind of very, very light gray here. And cool. I think this is a great starting point. Yeah. Right? Everything. So we did our tests. So the purpose of this exercise is to start to prune and refine your color palette. So as you can see, we started with this kind of big cross section here that we already whittled down. And we started pulling colors out, seeing how they work together, how they interact, checking their contrast and their saturation, and finding ones that work well together and finding ones that don't work well together. And then just simplifying it even more. And also keeping in mind what colors we are going to use where in our artwork. So these kind of earthy tones, the greens and the browns and the yellow, they're going to be great for the background. And then we have these kind of bright red, and then these like cooler blues, and even a neutral for maybe some of the other stuff. We don't know how this group, right here, will interact with this group. We may find there is a visual war going on, but we won't know that until we kind of really see it in context. But again, the goal is to see how things work together, continue to prune and refine and simplify. Cool, so we developed the palette a little bit, we added contrast. I'm ready to put this thing to the test. But before we do that, it's time for you to do some homework. All right, I want you to take your initial color samples and whittle them down to 3 or 4 colors at most. Next, you're going to put together your own interaction tests, just like I did. Now, don't be afraid to change the value, the saturation, or even swing the hue around a little bit, and keep contrast in mind. Once you're happy with everything, expand your palette by adding a neutral or two. Now, this part might be a little difficult for you, and that's okay. You can totally do it. I believe in you. And real quick, if you like this kind of stuff and want to do more of these fun exercises, check out the book called Interaction of Color by Joseph Albers. You might dig it. Before we move forward, I'd like to take a minute to teach you how to save your color palettes. Now, there's a bunch of different ways you can do this, but the two big ones I like to use are swatches and libraries. Let's start by saving our base color palette here as swatches. Now, I'm gonna do this in Illustrator, but I'm sure it's very similar in Photoshop or whatever else you're working on. Okay, so to start, I'm gonna go up here to Window, then all the way down to Swatches to open the Swatches panel. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that there are a lot of swatches already in there. And you know what? We don't need these, and we don't want to look at them. So we're going to start by going here to the little hamburger menu and saying select all unused. That should select everything. And then if you go down here to the little trash can, we're going to delete all those swatches. I don't even miss them. Look at that. And we're left with, you know, white and black, and that's fine. We can keep those. That's not a big deal. But that sort of gives us a blank canvas to work with here. Now, there's a lot of different ways to save swatches. You can kind of take the simplistic approach by just selecting something and then hitting this little new button, new swatch button, and then boom, it'll create a new swatch and save it in there, and there you go. But let me undo. When you have all these colors like this, you want to be a bit more organized, and also that'll take forever to do. So there is an easier way to do that. Let's start by selecting all of our little color swatches here, right? And then we're going to go back up to the hamburger menu in the swatch tab, and we're going to say new color group. And by clicking this, it'll create a folder that we can name, and it will automatically add all of the swatches, which is fantastic. So let's do that. New color group. I'm going to call this Color for Creatives. And if you're an Illustrator, just a quick little tip here. You want to make sure it says create from and then selected artwork. So it only adds the things that you selected. You also want to make sure that convert process to global is checked. And I'll explain what that means a bit later. It's a beautiful thing, trust me. All right, we'll hit OK. And look at that. If we're in the swatch panel, there's a little folder icon, and it has all, and it's called Color for Creatives. How nice. And all of our colors have automatically been added to it. Isn't that dynamite? Okay, so that's how to save these as swatches. Oh, one other thing regarding this. So another cool thing you can do is you can export this as an Adobe Swatch Exchange file, ASE. And this will let you share these colors across users and different computers, even different Adobe programs. So if you're working on something with a team, you just save it as an ASE and pass that file around, and there you go. Now, the easiest way to do that is to select your little group thing here, go down here and say, save swatch library as ASE. It will prompt somewhere for you to save it. I think the default is the swatches thing here. And there you go. You can save it anywhere and name it and pass it around and share with your friends and loved ones. Now, another way that you can save colors to easily share with friends is to use Adobe's library. And to do that, I'm going to go up here to Window, jump down to where it says Libraries, and this will open the Libraries tab window thing. Okay, and much like swatches, you can sort of create different libraries and then groups within those libraries to organize all kinds of assets. So swatches, it's made specifically for colors. Libraries is made for anything. You can save logos, you can save artwork, you can save color, you can save just about anything. And it gives you access to it in all Adobe products that you're logged into, even one on your phone. So it's kind of handy. I personally use this for a lot of the common colors and things I tend to reuse. So to get started, let's go to this hamburger menu up here. We're going to say create new library, and I'm going to give it the very clever name of Color for Creatives. I know, I just thought of that. So to save colors, usually you would drag and drop things into here. It doesn't quite work that way with color. So what you have to do is select one thing. Okay. And then you go down here to this plus, and it gives you this kind of option. It's like, hey, do you want to save the color of it, its fill color, or do you want to save the actual object you have selected as a graphic? So if we do graphic, it'll save like a green square in there, which is not what we want. So let me delete that. No, just there. There it is. Okay. But if we select it again, and then we go down here and we say fill color, it will select and save the color. And then it gives us the RGB value, which is kind of handy for reference. Now, there's an easier way to do this when you have so many colors, and that is to select your group up here, your swatch group, okay, assuming you made one. And if you go down here to this little like document with an arrow, it'll say add selected swatches and color groups to my current library. Now, in theory, you should press this and boom, it'll add everything in there. But we're getting hit with this error that says no color groups were added to your library. To be added, color groups must have a minimum of 1 color, which we do, and a maximum of 5 colors, which we have just a few too many. So I'm not sure why they limit it to 5. That kind of sucks. But hey, if you're watching this in the year 2025, maybe they've changed that. So give it a shot anyways. Until then, the easiest way to do that, if you're working with more than 5 colors like we are, is to select something, go down here to plus, choose fill color, and just kind of add them one by one. I know in our world of convenience, this is like, oh my God, I can't even believe it. But do it once, it will come in very handy later. And that is how you use colors in Adobe Creative Cloud, not Crowd, library. I just wanted to talk while I finished doing this, this whole thing. Cool, so see, now we have it in there. And what we can do in this library is make a little group, and we'll say color palette, okay? And you can sort of hide this or expand it whenever you need it. And you can also add other groups with different, like, you know, shapes, logos, things, even more colors, whatever you want. Yeah, so there you go. That's how to use the libraries. Cool, that wraps up this video. Pretty easy. Speaking of easy, here's your homework. Save your color palettes. Okie dokie, so we've got our color palette, it's ready to roll, but what good is a palette without a canvas? Let's give our colors some context and see how they hold up. All right, we've got our artwork here, we've got our color palette up here, and most importantly, we have our swatches saved over here. I think I like to start just by laying flat color over everything and not really worrying too much about what color goes where, but just kind of getting things placed. But before we do that, let's set our file up so it'll be easy to work with. So I'm gonna start by grabbing our sketch here, and I'm gonna rename this layer sketch, and maybe drop its opacity to like 20%. That's good, I can still see it, okay. And then I'm gonna lock this layer. Now I'm gonna make a new layer on top, and I'm gonna call it artwork. And this will be the layer that we work on here. Okay, and the reason I put this on top and over the sketch might be a little confusing because, you know, if we were to make some artwork, we're like, oh, here, I want to color in this part. Oh, I can't see the sketch. What happened to it? You know, that sucks. So normally you would kind of select whatever thing, go over here to the appearance or transparency, set it to multiply so you can see through. But that's kind of annoying if you have to do that for every single shape that you make. So that's not going to work. Good news is there is a better way. So if you have all these things on a layer, what you can do is target this whole layer and tell it to multiply. So we're going to go up here to the layers palette. I'm going to select artwork. And if you click this little circle over here, that is the target. And I'm going to target the layer itself. So now it's kind of everything. And if you go over here in the transparency tab, you can see it's like the entire layer is selected. And then you hit multiply. Now it's treating that whole layer as one thing that's being multiplied over the layers underneath it. So no matter what new thing you add to it, it will overlay and you'll still be able to see the underlying sketch, which makes life very easy. And the reason I do that instead of putting the sketch on top is because you can then use the eyedropper to sample a color without worrying about, you know, getting this kind of overlapping color that's being multiplied. So if the sketch were on top and I sampled this area, I would get this like darker red where the sketch line and the kind of shape color overlap. And this prevents that. So yay. All right. Let's get this stuff gone. Okay, one last thing. So as we lay shapes out here and kind of just get our flat colors going, we want to use everything from our swatches here. And I will show you why that's really important later. But we don't have a ton of swatches and they're all very tiny. I wish I could see them bigger. Turns out there is a way to do that. So actually, you know what, the better way to do this is to first filter it. So we have our swatch group here, then we have these other things. I don't need these other things. So I'm gonna go down here to this little show swatch kinds menu. It's like a little like grid looking guy. And I'm gonna go down to show color groups. And boom, there we go. So it filters out everything else, just our color group. I'm gonna change this to list view. That's a little easier. But if we go up here to the hamburger menu, I'm gonna go to large list view. That is even better. Some of you might like the small ones. That's cool too. Use whatever works for you. I just find with this many swatches, it's a little easier to not accidentally click something I did not want to. To really begin this process, I like to just start making stuff and start, you know, dropping color over things. And I'm not too terribly careful about what color goes where just yet. So I think what I'll do is just pick a color and start going. So you want to make sure that you're only picking colors from your swatches over here. And I promise to explain why later. So let's just get started with laying some flat colors out. So I'm just going to use the pen tool and start blocking things out. And you know, I like to get the general shape in, but I'd rather move fast than perfect at this point because we'll clean this up later and you know what? Let's just kind of make some progress. We spent all this time doing some research and thinking and, you know, color theory, blah, blah, blah. You know, let's have some fun finally. Let's put some things together. And so this is our like sketch over a sketch. It's like our sketch in color, right? Is that perfect? No. Will we change it later? Totally. But let's not worry about it right now. Okay, so I'm gonna do that. And then, you know, I think just start with a color from your swatch group. It doesn't matter what one. Chances are things will change later. But it's good to just move and start building things. Okay. Is that perfect? No. But you know what? It does look pretty good, and I'm okay with that. So yeah, here I'm just gonna start. I don't even know what happens down there. Should it be a stem? Should it just hit the ground? I'm gonna have it hit the ground for now. Okay. And I'm just blocking things out. That's it. Just blocking things out. Look, that looks weird. I don't even care right now. Doesn't matter. And you know what? Here's an even lazier thing to do. I'm gonna duplicate this. And you're gonna be like, what, dude? How dare you? And my response will be, hey, it doesn't matter right now. We'll clean this up and change it later. But for now, that works. Okay. And then once you have a few, and maybe grab another color. I'm gonna grab this darker green. And you know what? I'm gonna do the same thing here actually. So I'm gonna take this, duplicate it, rotate it a little bit, and I'll change this color to green, and then send it to the back. There we go. Okay. Maybe let's see, let's get like an overlapping color. Maybe we do this like this kind of tree thing here. I'm gonna use this brown. Why not? And maybe let's make this a stroke so that we can adjust its thickness later. I guess I'll go here. I'll put this up here. Okay. And I'm going to hit Shift X to switch it to stroke. And then, hit V to get out of that pen thing that's driving me crazy. And then let's just kind of go over here to stroke, hold Shift, get the thickness going. Maybe somewhere around there for now. Again, not too worried about it. Just blocking things out. That is how I like to work to start. Okay, and we'll do the same with these little branches here. Okay, and here. Oh, it has a green fill. So here, I'm gonna just eyedropper that so they're living in the same world now. Okay. So yeah, here we got part of our tree going. What else? Maybe let's try a rock over here. I'll use this gray, and I hope this shows up on screen. So here. So the reason that's the wrong thing. That's okay. We'll change it in a minute. The reason I'm just kind of jumping around here is to show you how much I don't care about what I'm doing right now. I'm just trying to get things in place. Okay. Oh, it still has a stroke. So it has a gray, but it has a stroke. So here, if we hit X to go over there, and then we hit slash to remove the stroke, now we got our cool gray rock. Yeah. And so, this is just a little bit, but it's a start, So what I'm going to do is go through this whole thing and start laying out flat colors. Just like this, not worrying too much about the shapes, like not being totally careless, but, trying to just get things kind of roughed in and figure out what color is going to go where. And then see how I feel about it. So I'm going to get to work and save you the trouble of watching me do this in real time. So I will see you on the other side. Well, here we are. We got some flat colors laid down, and here, let's turn the sketch off. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty rough, but I'm starting to get an idea. So at this point, I'm like, what do I like? What do I don't like? I don't like a lot of it. I don't like this like really bright blue. It looks kind of, I don't know. It looks like they're zombies or they're dead or they have no blood. It's kind of strange. So I'm not loving that color there. And I'm also noticing that I'm going to need to expand these colors a little bit. Like I need more than one gray to work with. I'm using too much red. I think, oh, And I forgot one of the most important things, background. We have no background color right now. It's just white. And I like to do something more than that. So let's go back to our background layer here. And I'm going to drag this right here. And you know what? I'm going to make it yellow because for some reason that's the one color I didn't I didn't use at all. And I'm going to send it to the back. And yeah, you know what? I don't mind that as a background color. I'm cool with that. I think it's, you know, so I'm going for something that's outdoorsy, warm, nature friendly kind of thing. And yeah, the yellow's working. And I'm not using it anywhere else. So, you know, I'm going to take this opportunity to show you why I wanted you to use swatches over here and why that's so important. So if the yellow is going to serve as our background, I want to just fine tune it a little bit. I like it, but I want to play with the brightness and the saturation just a touch. So you might be tempted to select the background and then double click over here and start moving things around, you know? And first of all, you don't get a preview if you're an illustrator, which is dumb, but hey. And also, let's say you do change it, cool, but your swatch doesn't update, so then you have to re-add the swatch, which, I don't know, that doesn't seem smart. However, what you can do is you don't even have to select this image. You can just double click on the swatch and it opens up your saved swatch. And you can see that right here where it says global, there's a check mark next to it. And what that means is that anywhere the swatch color is used, anywhere in the document, whatever change we make here and hit OK, it'll update that swatch and then everything else. Now, maybe we should use a different color just for demonstration purposes. But okay, yeah, let's say this like light blue, right? Let's say I wanted to change that. And it's in like several groups in his hands and his face and the dog and stuff. But if I just go in here and then I click preview and then I make adjustments like so, you can see that color adjust everywhere, no matter where it's used. And that is the beauty of global color. Pretty cool if you ask me. But here I'm gonna cancel. We're not here to talk about blue just yet. Let's get this yellow in a place where we feel good. So overall, I like how this dark green looks. That's good. I like this dark blue. I like the red a little bit and the brown. The lighter green is not my favorite. It's a bit too yellow, and this blue is clearly a problem with kind of tonally where we want to be. So let's start with the background. I think that's a good place to begin, and let's get that in a place where we feel good. And get used to making these adjustments because that's what working with color is like. You got to start somewhere. You just block it out. And even if you do it and you're like, wow, gross, that just means you have more work to do. That just means, you know, you have to get in there and adjust some things. So it's bright. It's really bright. So we really just have saturation to play with. And I guess we can swing the hue a little bit too. But let's play with the saturation and see what happens. Oh, I got to hit preview. Bloop. Okay. So if I move the saturation up, it gets really kind of nice and mustardy, and you know, I'm cool with that. I kind of like that actually. Or if we go much lower, then it gets a little more like tan and neutral, which might come in handy, you know? Yeah, I'm all right with that. So I think initially we were somewhere around here. Maybe we go like kind of warm neutral. So I'm gonna dial the saturation down to around like 36, somewhere around there. That feels good. So I like this as a background. It's nice and kind of neutral, but it has a little bit of warmth, which kind of works with some of our other colors. Now, when we have this background layer in here, we're going to go to grab something and be like, oh, and then start moving the background around. So what I'm going to do is hit Command 2 and lock that. You can also do that by going up here to the layers and scrolling all the way down to where your background is. And then you see there's a little lock next to it. You just do that. So that way, when you're working, you don't accidentally grab it and move it around. Okay, so let's start making some other adjustments initially to some of the colors we're working with, and maybe rearrange some of the things. So the dark green, I'm liking how that looks. I'm okay with that. This yellow green just it feels a bit too yellow. So let's adjust that. So I'm gonna double click the swatch, make sure to hit preview, and I'm looking at HSB, which is exactly what I want. Hue, saturation, brightness. And I'm going to move it a little closer to green, and which means to the right over here. And let's see what happens. Okay. Yeah, that starts to feel a little better. I feel like it's really saturated and really bright. So I'm gonna lower the saturation a little bit. And maybe even the brightness a touch. Okay. I know that dulls it a little bit, but with the other green, I don't know, it feels better. It's not as like kind of bright and neon looking. It feels a little more like an earth tone, which is exactly what I'm going for. So I'm gonna leave that for now. Okay. I like the brown looks good against the background here. It's kind of a tough read on the tree. So we could try doing a couple things. We could try starting by just taking this tree and making it the dark green instead, which that works, you know. That may affect our little buddy here, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, and then down here, this brown is kind of overlapping. So I'm also looking for, is there clarity in these shapes, right? Do like the way their shoe blends into this kind of thing back here, that's not a good read. And the way this like foliage blends into the tree trunk, I don't like that either. So I need to play around with some things. And I think to do that, we really do need to expand the palette a little bit, even if it's only to have some brighter and darker versions of these colors. So let's start by doing that. I know I need another gray to work with. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to drag this down there. Okay. And okay, because I want to change this color, I'm not going to go over here because I want to keep my original. But let's go over here then. And it sucks we have no preview, but I'm just going to start by going here to the brightness. And right now it's at 93. Let's just drop it down to like, here, I'll drop it down to 73. So it's just a little darker. Cool. That's our gray for now. What else do we want? Maybe we want like a lighter brown to work with here too. That might be kind of nice. So I'm going to take the brown, move it up here, and do the same thing. So I'm going to go over here to the left and just, let's see, I'm going to brighten it and desaturate it. So I want to go like up and to the left over here to make it just a bit brighter. Yeah, so somewhere around there. So it's just kind of like a lighter shade, right? Okay. I don't know how that'll look against the background. We'll see. And okay. Well, I mean, let's just start by adding those two and see where that gets us. So we want this gray color here. I'm going to select this. I'm going to hit new swatch, make sure it's global, and then hit OK. All right, and then we're going to have to drag it back into the group here, but that's all right. And then I'm going to do the same for this one. New swatch, global, OK. And then we'll drag it over here and we'll put it next to its cousin color. Okay, and then I'm just going to regroup these things. There we go. That's better. Okay, so yeah, let's start just by like changing a few things. And here I'm going to turn off the sketch layer. So let's, yeah, darker rock there. Okay, that's cool. That already is like adding some depth. You know, just to change it up a little bit. I'll do this guy too. Okay. And then I don't love that these red things are back here. They're totally blending. So let's make them this lighter version. See what happens. Oh, okay. Yeah, interesting. Oh, you know what I should do, because these are flowing together. Maybe I make this the lighter one and these the darker. Okay, then we lose this one here. So it's just a balancing game, right? Moving things around, always moving things around. Okay, well that feels a little better. I really hate this blue. It's just not, it's just not working for me at all. So, you know what might help is maybe we focus on the background on these kind of, these elements first. So, you know what, let's hide our characters for now. We'll go find them in here. I should have memorized the shortcut for that, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head. There we go. So we'll just hide this and this. Yes, so now we can kind of focus on what's going on back here. All right. I mean, things are actually a bit clearer without, like sometimes too much color just doesn't work well. All right. So I don't know. I don't love what's happening back here. It looks kind of dry. So what should we do? Well, let's just move some colors around and see what happens. We can also use our background color as kind of like a knockout for something. So here, I'm just gonna start moving things around, getting weird, changing it up. I like this better bright. You know what? I'm gonna move this down because I don't like that little thing. I'm gonna do the same with this. I may regret that later because the characters, but let's see how it goes. Okay. I think these being brown back here just isn't working for me at all. But the problem is we only have so many greens to work with. So we have these two. You know what? Let's add some more greens. So here, we're gonna take this one and we'll make a lighter version. And we'll take this one and make a darker version. And hopefully they don't end up looking like each other. Okay, so here we'll go here and then we'll just go up and left a little bit. Okay, so the darker it is, you can make it a bit more saturated and it's okay. But if you make it really light and too saturated, then you end up in like Neon Town up here, which is, it just looks unnatural. And I mean, unless you're really going for that specific look, I don't know. It's tough to work with colors that are that bright and saturated. Do these look too much alike? No, they're different enough. Okay. And let's make a darker version of this. So I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going to go like saturate it a little more and then drop it down just a little. Okay. Those are pretty much the same. So you know what? Let's get rid of this one. We can just use this one for now. And I think that'll be okay. All right. And then let's add that to our swatch. Make sure it's global. And we'll put them down here. So we have this nice kind of like in between green now, right here. And we'll probably need to adjust it, but that's okay. All right, let's try that. Okay, yeah. So there's enough of a difference there and there, Here, let's do. I'm not sure I love this as the dark tree anymore. Maybe we try this other green. No. Okay, maybe dark green it is. Or you know what? We could try a lighter version of this brown. Let's see what happens there. So if we make that light and then we do this lighter green here. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Wrong thing. Put it over here. Go to the fill. Okay. So that, you know what? I don't mind this at all. So let's grab these other ones. And here, deselect you. Yes, that's what I want. And then we're going to go to the stroke, make the stroke that slightly lighter version. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. All right, so looking better. I think basically what we're discovering is that the background should be mostly types of green with little touches of brown where it makes sense. But when we have these really large areas of brown or a leaf, it starts to look kind of, I don't know, too brown, you know, like the plants are dying or something, and I don't love it. So let's just keep working. Let's try to get rid of the brown for now, and then we'll figure out what to do later. So I'm just kind of rearranging some of these colors here, since we have 3 greens to work with, and we can always adjust later. It's no big deal. Here, I want to, maybe that can be the lightest green. Yeah. So it's like musical chairs. You're just kind of moving all these things around, and that's okay. Oh, I got this guy. Maybe the dark one. Let's try that. Yeah, okay. I'm all right with that. What else? These are kind of blending together. Maybe this one should be the light one. Yes. Maybe this is the middle green. Yes. Maybe this is a darker green. Yeah, that makes sense, because these are both kind of the same leaf back here. And what else? So I still don't love this right here. There's something kind of strange, but you know, what if we try this as the middle one, and then we do these 2 as dark? Yeah, that looks better. I like that more. Okay. So I'm going through and I'm looking at, for all the plants and the greens, I'm starting over again. I'm like, okay, is there enough contrast? And can I make out the shapes of everything for the most part? You know, some things blend a little bit, but maybe that's okay for now. But mostly I'm just like trying to find this balance of color. And right now it looks pretty good. Since this rock is so light, I might make this green just a touch darker. Yeah, there's a little more contrast there, right? And then I'll change up one of these 2 to the middle one. Yeah, that's better. And then maybe this one too. You know, just so there's a nice variety. I don't know. I like variety. That's just me. Something like that. Okay. So I think we're looking better here overall. Yeah. There's much more contrast. Not hardly any brown. In fact, just this kind of like tree trunk now. But that's okay. We have a lot of little like details and stuff that we can add later, where maybe that brown will come in handy. Or like I said, you know, there's no rule that says, hey, you have to use all of these colors that we pulled. We may find ourselves only using a handful. And that's fine. So what else? Do I want to do anything else? What about this? Is this too? Yeah, there we go. Maybe a little darker there. And we'll give this the same treatment. Those are kind of blending, but I'll leave it for now. That's okay. Yeah, okay. So that's a lot easier to read. How do we feel about this rock? I know I keep changing it. Oh, wrong thing. Yeah, so this green and this gray, they're a little too close together. So I think the rock looks better lighter that way. And you know what? Maybe we adjust the middle green the new one we created just a little bit and see what happens. Maybe it's fine, but let's try something. Okay, so we'll open up the swatch, hit preview, and then I'm just gonna mess with the brightness, and I'm gonna like bring it up a little, and it gets too close to its friend, right? So if we go down a little is good, I think, because I'm looking for like enough separation between this green and the light one, and this green and the dark one. Dark one's pretty good. The light one, this looks better. So if we like, you know, before and after it, it's just a tiny bit darker, but I think it works better. There's just a bit more contrast there. Okay, so yeah, looking much better here. Let's turn our characters back on. Oh boy, okay, these they need some work. But hey, the background looks all right. Now that we've got our flats laid down, this is the point at which I take a step back and I look at things with more of a critical eye. And I like to start by asking myself, where do I want to put emphasis? Working with color is all about striking a balance. And if we go back to the music analogy, you don't want all of the instruments in an orchestra to be playing at the same volume, or even at the same time. In this case, I want to make sure that the character and the dog are really standing out from the background. Let's talk characters. Now, we have a background that looks good, but man, this blue, it's killing me. I don't know, unless it's like a little tiny thing like maybe the watch, it's just not working. It's too bright, it's too saturated, and it just feels totally outside of the palette. Probably because it's a dog and the skin tone, so it's just weird overall. So let's just start by changing those things altogether. So I'm gonna grab our dog here, and I think I need to go into this group. Yep. All right. I'm just gonna make the dog red for now. Anything but blue. Okay. Okay. Let's go into our character here, and we have a few things. So we have the hands, and these are like little like ankles, and we got face. I'm gonna zoom in. Probably should have grouped this. Nose, ear. There we go. And you know, let's try. Oh yeah! Wow. Okay, so already that's such a big difference. That's great. And I don't even. You know, fine. I'll leave it on the belt. Let's see how that looks. Okay, I mean, even just with that one change, wow, what a significant difference. So yeah, cool. Well, definitely a step in the right direction. And before, we were focused on the background, and we realized that, you know, okay, green is the dominant color with little touches of brown, and then we have some kind of neutrals for the rocks and stuff. But for the most part, we want the background to be just that, in the back. We want to make sure it has color, and you know, you can read everything in the shapes, but we don't want it to overshadow and outshine our wonderful characters here. So I think that's where we can start using some of these other colors. So maybe, you know, well, obviously the red and the browns, and I don't mind this dark blue at all, because that really kind of brings these things forward. And as we know, warm colors, according to our science and perception, they tend to come forward more in an image, whereas cooler ones go further back. And then obviously saturation and contrast have a lot to do with that. So let's take a look at our character here. I think red is great, but red is such a powerful color, you know. I feel like we might be using too much of it right now. So let's just try to simplify the amount of red we're using. And although I do like it on the dog, it might be a bit much. So let's try. We could do this light one, light brown. No, not enough contrast, right? It's like, yeah. So I'm feeling we could either go dark brown again, or we could try the dark blue on the dog. I mean, how would that look? Right now, this dark blue is kind of acting like our black. Okay, I mean, we lost its face and stuff, but I don't hate it. What would it look like is just brown now? Let's try that. Okay, I mean that it looks like a dog, so that's a good start. We have some issues back here with this leaf, right? Because this brown and this green are very similar in value. So, you know, we're gonna have to work on that. But I think that's a nice step. Yeah, it looks better. It's more natural. Now, this kind of pinkish undershirt color on our character is not great. Like, it's okay on the shoes down here, but against the background in this green, again, it's not working that well. So You know, what do we do here? Well, I know I want to remove the amount of red overall, and I want to use it kind of sparingly. Like I like it on the shoes, maybe the hat. You know, maybe just changing the shirt color because that's also a shade of red will help as well. So let's start there. You know, let's try using one of our neutrals. So I'm going to select my shirt bits, and I think the lighter one would work better. Okay, yeah, I don't mind that. Oh, forgot one. It also brings our character forward a little bit. This part is very hard to see, but that's fine. I'll leave it for now. I'm just trying to like trim out the red. Okay, let's change the vest color too while we're here. Maybe we'll go neutral again, but the darker one. Let's see what happens there. Okay, the darker is a better read, but yeah, we're gonna need to work on that. And I like this kind of like cool outfit overall with like a little pops of red. In fact, you know what? Let's dial in the red a little bit because it's kind of dark. I think we can give it, if the red is going to be our accent color, let's give it a little more punch, right? So here, let's go over into this. We'll hit preview, and here, let's just start with the brightness. So it's at 80 right now. Let's bring it up a little bit, see what happens. Yeah, okay, it pops a bit more. And then maybe we can even bump the saturation a little. Yep, okay. I know, it's a little tiny bit, but it makes a difference, right? It's not as dull, so I'm cool with that. Now, I really like this dark navy. And this bright blue, I still don't even like it as a belt. It's just so kind of wild. Let's expand our colors a bit more here. So maybe we have some more blues to work with. Maybe we can even play with the neutrals a little bit. So I'm gonna go back up to our swatches here, and let's make a lighter version of this blue. So I'm not gonna go to the palette because I wanna make a new color. I'm gonna go over here and let's brighten it up a bit, and we'll give it, like, desaturate it just a little bit. And yeah, okay. We can try that, see how that works. And then what else do we have? You know, what if we were to take this gray and actually cool it a little bit? Because I'm pretty sure right now it's absolutely neutral. Yeah, so let's add a little blue to it and see what happens. So right now we can see that its saturation is 2%, which is basically nothing. But even if we were bringing it all the way up, it's actually like a yellowish hue, which that's weird. I don't want that. So let's bring this back down. And let's change the hue. Well, here, we'll move it in the middle so we can actually see the color. And let's change the hue to be over in the blue area a little bit. Okay, so maybe somewhere around there. And then we don't want it to be this bright blue. That's crazy. Although I do like how the vest looks now. It's kind of nice. And let's, bring it back down here. And it was at 2% before. So if we bring it up a little bit, like basically around 10, we start to get a little glimpse of the color. And cool. I think that's cool. So now it's still a very, very light gray, but you can see it actually has a little bit of blue in it, and that's kind of nice. While we're here, maybe we can adjust the light gray. Maybe we darken it just a little bit so it reads better. I feel like it's either got to be brighter than our background here, this yellow, or it's got to be a little darker, because right now it's a very tough read. So I'm gonna double click this, hit preview, and okay. So, I mean, if we go any brighter, it's just gonna be white. Well, almost white. It's better, but it's still, I mean, yeah, that's better. Let's see what happens if we make it darker. Okay. Yeah, that's all right. It's tough because, you know, you don't want it to get too close to the other colors. And right now it's the brightest color we have. So I'm thinking we go brighter. If we need the contrast, let's go brighter. So maybe like 95. Yeah. Okay. We just brightened it a touch. That's cool. Contrast. Life is all about contrast. Okay, so we're getting there. I mean, this gray already looks kind of nice. Oh, I almost forgot about our blue up here. So let's add this color to our palette. So we'll go add new, make sure it's global, hit OK, drag it on over, and then show color groups to get back to the view that we like. Wonderful. All right. So let's try to place this blue in here. So maybe we can do, well, we could try this because we know this against the background is a tough read. So let's just see what it looks like. Ooh, gets really dark, and then it's kind of tough. Let's mess with it a little bit. We just made this color. We're not committed to it. Whatever. So I hit preview. I'm gonna brighten it a little more. Oh no, we're gonna end up with the color that we hate. Yep. Okay. No bueno. That's not good. All right. Well, sometimes you get stuck like this, and no matter what you do, it just doesn't look good. Okay, you know, maybe that color is not right for that piece of artwork there. So I'm going to undo, bring it back. Okay, maybe we try the vest. Let's give that a shot. Okay, this one. All right, I don't mind it. It's okay. But yeah, this is just such a tough read against the background. You know, it might help is we could add stripes to the shirt or something. See if that does anything. You know, for now, I think I'll leave it. What else? I really want to get rid of that blue, that bright blue color. So here, let's move that to this. And you know, the more I think about it, the more I like this as as a gray. If you were to actually watch me work, I would change my mind so many times about color. It's just one of those things. You know, you have to kind of continuously test and refine and balance and double check and look at it from out here and be like, oh, I don't know, and then look at it from in here. Yeah, it's a tricky thing. So I'm just going to go in and update some of these little bits for, again, just more like separation between shapes and things like that. Okay. So right now I'm really just debating. I'm like, do I want his upper body to be this color, this like bright color? I mean, we could try going all in on red. See what happens here. I don't know. That's a lot of red. It's a lot of red. It's also like, because it's a complement of this green, you kind of get some weird vibration going on visually, and I don't love it. So maybe we go back to red vest. Maybe we were right all along with the red vest, and that's okay. Yeah, it's kind of, that seems to work the best. Then maybe we have to change the color to a different. Oh, you know what? Maybe we need a darker red, or a different red, I should say. You know, we can still adjust and change these colors anytime we want. Okay, so I'm gonna make this a little darker, a little over here. Okay. Add that to the mix. Global, yes. Drag it in, yes. Okay. So here, we're gonna make this darker red. Yeah, that's cool. A little variety is nice. Maybe these red sleeves are too much because the shirt, like, who would make a shirt with that? That's kind of intense. So I'm just gonna have these little cuffs be the darker version. Yeah, okay, so this is starting to feel a lot more balanced. Yeah, I'm liking it. You know, we have this nice brown and then we have this red. We could like bring them together a little more and have the brown be a little more red and have the red be a little more, I guess, orangey would be the right word I'm looking for. Let's try something. So right now we're at 8 in the red. That's pretty damn red. So maybe we go a little to the right, change it so it's a bit more orange. Ooh, okay. So it's kind of interesting. So it's more of like an orangey red. It's a little more earth tone. I think that actually works better. I'm gonna go with that. And let's do the same thing with our dark red here. Hit preview, and then make it just a little more orangey. Oh, way too much orange. Way too much. Sometimes, maybe I just need to like literally do the number. Sometimes number is easier. I'm gonna darken it just a little bit more. That's cool. Okay, so that, and you know what? Orange, blue, get more compliments here. I think this works a lot better, in fact. Okay. Let's play with the brown a little bit. And the goal is to swing it just a little more to the red and see what happens. I don't want them to be the same, so we might be just fine, but let's play around. So right now it's at 34. Move it over just a little bit. It goes really red really fast. See? That might be tough. So here, if it was at 34 before, what if we just number down a little bit? So we just go down a couple. So it's like 30. Okay. And then maybe we brighten it just a little too. Again, always looking for contrast. That's like the biggest thing. So 80 feels good. Well, this is okay too. I guess if it gets a little brighter. They do get really orange though, so I don't know. Maybe we split the difference and go to like somewhere around 84. Let's try that. Okay, so I mean already the colors feel a bit more harmonious, if I may. Yeah, the red was very, very red before. I think swinging it a little more toward the orange really helps tie in the rest of the colors. And it's in keeping with that kind of earthy natural tone that we're looking for. This blue is really saturated. Like it's by far the darkest color. If you squint, you just like, see that blue. Maybe we soften it just a little bit. So let's open it up. And okay, I mean, I don't want to take away all the darkness, but I want to bring it more in line with what we have. So it's not as crazy dark. So I'm going to bring up the brightness just a little. Okay. And it's also quite saturated. We know if we go too bright, we're going to end up with that neon blue that we all hate so much. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Everyone out there could be like, I love that blue. So I'm going to bring the saturation down just in case. Yeah. Okay, so somewhere around there. Let's do before and after. Okay, yeah, it's just a touch softer, and I'm all right with that. It's still by far the darkest color, but it doesn't feel like it's so dark that it kind of just overpowers everything. Cool. So I think we have a much better palette going on here. let's play around with the type a little and see if maybe it's fine. I mean, I like the green, but maybe we try something else because there's a lot of green going on. So we can go with the obvious. Ooh, kind of cool. All right. Too dark. Yeah, I don't know, I'm liking this. I'm liking this a lot. You know, now that we have this cool orange, we could update the dog too. Remember when I said you're just gonna bounce back and forth between all these different colors and constantly? No, still too red. You're gonna try a lot of things and a lot of things won't work, and you know, it's just a lot of testing. Okay. Yeah. This looks pretty good. How about this over here? I feel like make it just one more thing thickness, one more thicker. Let's play around. What green is that right now? It's the darkest green. So maybe we go up one green. See what that does. Yeah, there we go. That's a little better. Okay. Cool. So, man, this has come such a long way. I mean, look where well, I don't have, everything's been updated, but we're already like really developing a nice cohesive, harmonious palette. We have greens in the background with little touches of brown here and there. Our foreground characters and information like type uses more like reds, which are bright. We know that comes forward. And then a little bit of this kind of like navy blue to help like give us a complement and balance it out a bit. But overall, yeah, I'm feeling much better about how this is going. There are still some, points of contrast that I'd like to correct, like the brown and this green. And maybe that's as simple as just changing the color of this. Maybe we make this I'm on the wrong fill color. Maybe we just make this a lighter one and it's better. I mean, yeah, that's already a little better there. So we could try that. There's also like, I roughed out the artwork. It needs some cleaning up, and there's some weird tangents happening, like where the elbow is hitting this and, the fingers in this. But these are little adjustments we can make to things along the way, to make it that much better. Little things. So I think what I'd like to do next is go through and just clean up some of the artwork, maybe move a couple more colors around, and then I think we'll be ready for the next step. So let me go do that and I'll be right back. Here's where we're at with everything. So I went in and just cleaned up, moved some things around a little bit, just, gave it a little overall kind of tightening and polish, and I'm pretty happy with how it looks. But as we went over earlier, the one thing we have yet to do is a value check. So let's bring this into Photoshop and see how the values look. Okay, just took a quick screenshot. We're here in Photoshop. Now I'm going to go down here and add a new hue and saturation adjustment layer. And then I'm going to go back over here to the properties for that and drag the saturation all the way down. Here we go. Okay, so overall we're pretty good. I see, like really dark values. I see a lot of like kind of medium and darker grays and then some lighter grays. Overall pretty good contrast. I can still kind of make out all the shapes even in black and white. Now, the one thing which we noticed before is this light gray in the background, they're really close. And I know we tried making this kind of light gray brighter or darker, and it wasn't working. It started to get too close to other things. So what I'd like to try then is, instead of changing this, maybe we darken our background ever so slightly. I think that's the only change I would make, because overall everything else reads really well. So let's jump back into Illustrator and see what we can do. Let's take a look at our background color, which is this nice kind of pale yellow. So I'm just going to go over to the swatches panel, double click this, hit preview to make sure we can see what we're doing. And I just want to adjust the brightness of it. I don't want to mess with it too much, in fact, because I really like how everything else works with it. We had good contrast. It's just against that rock right there, and like the shirt a little bit. So let's play with the brightness and see what happens. So I'll drag it down just a touch. It's like 95. Okay, I have better, yeah, it looks better there. It does kind of like dull the background color quite a bit though, even with that 5%. So let's bring the saturation up a little bit and see if that'll help. Okay, yeah, that seems to help a little. So I'm gonna dial it in somewhere around there. Yeah, okay. So we have much better contrast with this kind of like light gray and the shirt and the background, and everywhere else, we didn't lose too much. So let's toggle back and forth, see what happens. Yeah, you know what? I'm cool with this. It gets a little close right here, but I don't mind that so much. I think overall it looks better. And bringing back some of the saturation as we darkened it was a big help, because I feel like although it's darker, we didn't lose any of the vibrance of that color. Look for contrast, and then maybe start by identifying where you want to put the most emphasis and kind of work around that point. Lastly, make sure you do at least one value check. And it's okay to do this more than once. In fact, you can do several along the way. Be on the lookout for contrast and then adjust things as you go. This is probably the toughest part of this course, and that's okay. Just remind yourself that working with color is a process. It's going to take some back and forth before you get things right. And you're probably going to change some color values along the way, so don't be afraid to do that. Also, don't feel like you have to use all of the colors from the palette. It might just be too much. And if you're struggling, start by using 1 or 2 colors along with the neutral. That'll be a lot easier to work with. Plus, you can always add more colors later. Now that we understand how our base colors are working together, let's expand the palette and give ourselves some options to work with later. Overall, I feel really good about how this looks. All the colors are working pretty well together. There's a nice balance of everything, and the things in red are the things we really kind of want to call out. So we got the shoes and this type and the hat and the jacket. It's good, but I do feel like it's missing one key ingredient. And that's light. Now you don't have to do this, but I like to add some shadow to my illustrations just to give it a little bit more depth and information. And I don't know, it just kind of makes things look a bit more interesting in my opinion. So let's take a look at how to approach creating shadows. And because I like you so much, I'm going to show you my favorite tip for how I develop shadow color. Before we go bananas and start making shadows all over the place on our illustration, I want to just walk you through my thinking for how to approach the color of shadows. All right, so we're going to use a very simple sphere here to kind of illustrate this point. So we have a sphere. It's on this kind of creamy background. Light source is coming from the top right up here. So we got a little shadow here and a little cast shadow on the ground. Now you might be thinking, cool, we just take this and then we dial down the transparency to like 50%. All right, yep, that looks like a shadow, we're done. Except, no, that really doesn't look good. Like this is, I don't know, this is all dull and gray and this is like, I don't know, not very saturated. You kind of lose some of the magic of the color that you really should get in a shadow. So let's cast this off to the side for a moment. And let's take another approach. So I'm gonna select these, bring them all the way back up. And one trick to get at least a more interesting colored shadow is to figure out what the base color is and then just kind of darken it from there. So I'm going to sample this so it's the same color. And then I'll open this up. And then generally speaking, if you want a somewhat realistic looking shadow, you just want to change the brightness of it. Okay, so obviously you want to make it darker. But the trick is you want to figure out where it is, the brightness here up at the top, where it could be if it goes pure black, which is all the way down here, and start at least somewhere right in the middle. So basically take this halfway to black. All right, so I'm gonna bring it right there. And I hate that we don't get a preview, but let's just say okay and see what happens. Okay, kind of looks the same, so not that interesting. So let's go a bit darker. Okay. All right, I like the darker one, that's fine. But you know what would really help is if we added some saturation back to it. Because as this color gets darker, it gets duller also, and it loses that saturation. So I'm gonna resample it, and let's go all the way back, and we'll bring it to about halfway, and then let's move it to the right. Let's up the saturation a little bit. And I'm not gonna go crazy like over here. I just wanna move it a little bit. So let's try this and see what happens. Much better. Look at that. So you still get the awesome darkness, but how much more vivid is that color? It's just way more interesting. So let's do the same for the background and then we can compare. So here, I'm gonna sample that. And then generally for lighter colors, you know, things up here, I tend to not go quite as far down for the shadow because you do that, it gets really, I mean, I don't know, it's not bad. You know, let's roll with it. But I tend to like to keep them a little brighter. Okay, so we have the value we want. Now let's scooch it over a little bit, bring some more saturation back. All right, that looks significantly better. I mean, this over here just looks so washed out and dull, drab. This we at least, you know, we get the darkness, but we keep some of that color, and I think it looks a lot better. Now, what if we want way more interesting shadow colors? So here, let's make another copy of this. And this is the trick that I like to use because I find it creates really, really vivid, interesting color. So I'm gonna bring this back to black, bring this back to black, and start over. So we'll take this, we'll go through the same process. So we'll sample it, and then we'll open this up, and then we'll darken it. And another way to think about this down and to the right thing is like, you know, just make like a right angle, or you can kind of like go over first and then go down. Whatever you want to do. It could be an arc, it could be an angle, whatever works for you. Okay, so cool. Yeah, we got a good looking thing there. I'm gonna brighten it up just a little bit. Actually, I feel like I went too far. Okay, now to make this more interesting, we should change the hue of this a little bit. And generally, if you look at a lot of illustrations and paintings and photographs, in fact, if you were to sample the color from shadows, you find that shadows are often cool, so they lean a lot more toward the blue. So let's take our shadow color here, and then we're gonna adjust the H value, and we're gonna move it closer to blue. And sometimes that's kind of hard to figure out which way to go, because down here, if we're at the very bottom, blue is this way. It's up. But if we go there, we get some really wacky stuff happening. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's fine. But think of this vertical line as the color wheel. So it's actually a 360. So this end would connect to here. So to get to blue, it's a lot closer of a journey if we start up here and then go down. So I'm gonna move this 1 degree to 360 over there. And then let's like move just a little bit toward blue, but not too much. We don't want to go like super crazy. We can, and we'll go over that, but let's just move it a little bit, say to here. So we're just swinging the hue a little bit. Okay. So that's kind of interesting. Let's see what happens when we do that with the background. So we'll open this up, darken it, bring up the saturation a bit. And this one's weird because I don't know if I go this way, I don't want it to go, that just doesn't seem I don't know, that doesn't seem right. So I'm gonna go the other way, and I'm gonna make it a little warmer. Because I don't see a way to get to blue that doesn't just make a weird color. So let's try this. Okay, so this shadow has a little more red in it. Maybe we can exaggerate that a little bit more. Okay, that's a lot more. I was thinking a little, but. All right, so let's compare what we've done just now. So over here on the far left, that's just like throwing black transparency over it. Just kind of, yeah, you get a shadow, but it's really dull. The colors aren't that interesting. They lose their vibrance. Now, if you darken it, but then you also bring some of the saturation up, okay, you get something more interesting, a little more realistic and dynamic, and you don't lose the saturation and the vibrance in the shadow. However, if you take the shadow color and you move the hue toward blue, or even warmer down here in this case, then you start to get some, I don't know, some really interesting color choices. So here, I'm gonna trash these other two. I won't trash them, I'll just put them on another layer. And let's try to do some variations on this and just see what we can come up with. Okay, so if we start over here, we'll sample this, and I'll just remember that's there. Okay, so let's go in here, and we'll go down about halfway. We'll add some saturation, and then let's go to way more extreme. So before, I think we were like around here. Let's go even further down. Oh, we're in Purple Town. Okay, interesting. Let's go here. Oh yeah, that's already that, sorry. Okay, and then we'll darken this, add saturation, and then let's go even more extreme with this one too. You know what? Let's try going the other way. Why not? Let's see what happens. So we're gonna cool this down as it gets more toward green. So almost like an olive now. Okay. Interesting. So this shadow right here is super purple and it's very saturated. I feel like it actually starts to overpower the red a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna bring down the saturation just a little bit. Maybe something like that. Because we want that cool color, but we don't want it to compete with the red. Yeah, that feels a little more balanced, right? So interesting. And then down here, we have this like green thing going on. But you know what? It kind of works. So you can use this trick of darkening colors, adding saturation, and then moving the hues more toward like a blue or warmer, however you want to do, to get much more interesting shadow colors. And this really comes into play when you want to communicate like, you know, what color is the light source? Is it, maybe it's like, yeah, it's like this crazy like purplish color, and the shadow it casts is really, really dark and cool. In that case, this might be a different color too. But I find doing this creates much more interesting shadow colors. The original just looks so boring by comparison. So let's push this to the extreme. We'll go all the way up here. See what happens. I feel like we need to take some saturation out too. Let's try that. I'm not saying this works at all, but I don't know. It at least makes for something interesting. And what's more important than like trying to figure out if it's the right color or not is consistency. So if you decide that all things this color will have this purple as their shadow color, and you do that for everything, and the ground, everything with this color has this kind of thing, I guarantee it'll work because you're consistent in your design. Now that we know how to do it, let's build a shadow color palette using our own colors. So we're gonna swing over here. Okay, and we have our whole color palette up here. There's a lot of colors, and we're gonna have to make shadows for each one of them. But let's keep it really simple and just try to figure out some one or two maybe, okay? So, you know what? Our dog needs shadows down here for sure. So let's get in there, and I'm just gonna make a new little swatch over here. But it'll be the same color as our dog. Cool. There we go. Get rid of that stroke. All right, so we're looking for the shadow color for this. Now, what I like to do is just make a copy of it, put it here, and then let's see. Well, we need to change the color, and then if we like it, then we'll save it over here as a swatch. So let's start by double clicking, and then we'll do the same thing. So we'll drag this down about halfway, and then we'll add a little bit of saturation. I don't want to get too far over to full-blown saturation. And then there, that's sort of like our base shadow 1. Now, if we wanted to make something more interesting, we could take that, and then we could either make it warmer or cooler. So in this case, let's warm it up a little bit. So the hue's at 26, so it's pretty low down here. Let's try to lower it just a little bit more. Add a touch of red into it. Okay, so we get like 18, that's cool. All right, so these are our two kind of shadow options. I think all we really need to do is add them to maybe these legs here. So let's see what happens when we do that. Okay, we gotta dig a few groups down in here. So we're gonna pick this guy, give him that color. You know what, let's start with the safe, so to speak, shadow color. Whoop. Okay, we're gonna grab that leg there and make it the same one. Oh, sorry, I meant this one. There we go. Okay, so it's pretty dark. I'm not sure how I feel about it being that dark. It's kind of extreme. So what I might do is, let's just take this one and lighten it up a touch. So we'll just do this, and then we'll bring it up just a little bit. For this particular spot, I don't think we need like that big a difference. So let's try this out instead. Dig all the way in here. Get that. Okay. Yeah. That, I mean, that feels a lot better. It's not as high contrast. Okay. But I really want to try this and see if one of these will work. Now, I know this is going to be too dark because it's the same value as this. So let's make a different version of this where it's just a little brighter. So I'll bring it up here just a touch. Okay, I think that's reasonable. How does that look? Zoom out here a little bit. It's still dark, but you know what? I like it more than just the plain. I think it adds something interesting to it. Let's roll with it. Let's see what happens. Okay, so that's what we're going to do for all of these colors up here, except for you. We don't like you. And yeah, so what I'm going to do is go in and draw on some shadows, and we'll use the same process to kind of test out and figure out shadows for every color in here and see what that'll do to the illustration. So let me go do that, and I will be right back. And there we have it, shadows and all. I love this part, and I feel like this stuff just adds so much richness and depth to the image. It looks really good. Good job, me. As for you, here's your homework. Your homework is to build your own shadow palette and add it to your artwork. Start with your base colors, bring everything down, and then find a color temperature you like. And if that sounds like too much work, then try it on something really simple first. And you can always download my source files and play around with them too. This tip is unique to Illustrator, but it's probably the most powerful one that I can show you and that you'll want to use every single day. It's called Global Colors, and it works with the swatches panel over here. So normally, let's say you make a swatch, grab this blue, make a new swatch, and sometimes by default, this little global thing won't be checked. You hit OK, and then you're like, hey, great, you know, here, let me apply this swatch to everything. I'll go up here and select same fill color, and we'll give everything this swatch. Boom, it's done. And you're like, cool, hey, you know what? I want to change the color of the swatch. So here, let me do this, hit preview, and then we'll move it over, make this like yellow, green, gross color. And it's only updating the one that I selected and the swatch, but none of these other ones are affected. So that's where global color comes in and really kind of saves the day. So if we back up here, we trash this, and let's rewind, say, okay, I want to make a new swatch and I'm going to make it a global color. So we'll do this. We'll make sure global is checked, hit OK. Our swatch is saved. And you'll see now that there's like a little white triangle in the bottom right corner of the swatch. That little icon is an indication that, hey, this is a global color that's being used. So if we do the same thing, we go and select all these and we apply this swatch to them. Now we don't even have to select anything. We just open up the swatch, hit preview, and then change the color to our heart's desire. And there we go. And it's all nice and updated. So it'll update. It's kind of like, if you're familiar with web design, like style sheets for objects in Illustrator. And you're like, okay, I get it. That's pretty easy. Like, why do I have to go to all that trouble? Well, what happens when you're working with artwork like this? Fortunately, we set this up with global colors. So if I wanted to change all of this color red right here, I could find that, which I think is this one. Open it up, hit preview, and then if I'm like, I want it to be more purple and darker, then boom, I can just do it right here and it'll update everywhere. So you can see it updating everywhere. And these things are nested like groups inside of clipping masks. It's pretty gnarly in there. So global colors comes in really handy, especially when you're using kind of very dense artwork like this. Adobe Illustrator's recolor feature is one of the most fun things to play with for a lot of reasons. Let me show you how it works. So let's say, let's say you are working with a client and at the last minute, they're like, I want to change the color of this tree. It's pretty easy to do, but let's say you had 10,000 trees. Well, if you're using global colors, great, you could do it that way. But recolor lets you do it a little more intuitively, which I think is kind of cool. So if you go up here to edit, and then go to edit colors, select recolor artwork. All right, so you get this pretty complex looking interface and there is a lot going on, but fundamentally you get to see like, here are the colors that are in use from the things you've selected, right? And you can click on each one and start to modify and adjust it a little bit to taste. So if you want to make it darker, you want to change the color completely, you can do whatever you want with it, which that's cool, right? Okay, it's kind of like global colors, but all at the same time. But there's so much more to this. So here, I'm going to do it again. You can also just take these and kind of map different colors to the existing pieces right now. So right now, this kind of orange is orange, tan is tan, light green is light green, dark green, dark green. But if you just drag this around, you know, you can try different things out and it's really, really easy and super fun, I might add, right? So that's pretty cool. But what if you want to be a little more random? Well, fortunately for us, there's a random button down here. So if you click this, it'll randomly change the color order right here and remap it. So if you have, you know, a bunch of colors, this is really fun. But even if you just have 4, you can start clicking. And right away, you see these wonderful different combinations that are just kind of randomly put together. And if you have an existing color palette you're working with, this is a great way to try to change it up and get some different versions going for, you know, how to style and color the artwork. I actually like some of these more than what I did. Look at that. That's really beautiful. That's nice. Cool. Okay. So that's not it though. There's one more really neat feature that I adore. So let's say the client's like, I no longer want this to be green and the colors that you have. I want a new palette and I want it to be this. So I have this new palette down here, which is very like kind of earthy and brown. So let's say we wanted to apply that color palette to all of our artwork. Well, we can painstakingly do it piece by piece, or we could try recolor. So if we select this object, go up here to edit colors, recolor artwork. And now you'll see over here on the right, we have our original like Color for Creatives color palette we made. And then there's this other one called New Palette. So if you click on a different palette over here, it will assign these colors and replace them with your existing ones. So check this out. Boom, look at that. Isn't that cool? That's awesome. Man, I love this tree. This is like a fantastic winter looking color scheme. And then you can do the same thing. You can, move artwork around. You can hit the random button and then just see what it comes up with on its own and work with it as long as you want until you find something you like. And that is the power of Recolor, which I think is really, really awesome. Another cool color trick that you can do in Adobe Illustrator is called Adjust Color Balance. Now, this is quite easy to do in Photoshop. There's like a little filter for it, but in Illustrator, not so much until recently, which I think, I don't know when they added this, but it's kind of nice. So what you want to do is start by selecting all of your artwork. And you know what? I'm gonna unlock our background color here. Yeah, there we go. So we can select that too, because I want to change everything, and you'll see what I mean here. So, we're getting these outlines from the layer. I'm also going to go to hide edges. So we have everything selected, but we just can't see the selection handles. Okay, cool. Now we're going to go back up to edit colors, and this time go down to adjust color balance. Now you're greeted with a much simpler interface here, and I'll walk you through what each of these kind of settings are. The first thing you want to do is make sure preview is checked. So if we change something, we can see what we're doing. This first one, global, is kind of just, well, it doesn't do a whole lot. You move it to the right and you're like, what is this? But you move it to the left and it starts tinting it. And we know that a tint means adding white to something. So if you want to soften something, kind of dull it a little bit, brighten it, then go nuts, go tint all the way. That is not what I want to do, so I'm going to hit 0. Let's see. If we go to grayscale, this is a great way to kind of quickly do a grayscale check too, like a value check. So if you hit convert, it'll just make it black and white. So we're seeing the gray value. So it's been converted to grayscale. So pretty cool. Like that's a great little preview trick right there. But from here, if you did want to convert your artwork to black and white for some reason, you could, either have it be brighter or kind of have it be darker. So this is kind of like your threshold of gray right here. All right. But I don't want to do that either. Let's go to RGB. Now this is where the real fun stuff happens. And you will notice right away that a little bit in changing these values goes a long way. Now to see any real action, you want to hit this convert checkbox. So now we're working with red, green, and blue and everything we have selected in this image here. Okay, so let's say we wanted to make this warmer. Well, maybe we would add red to it. So maybe we just add a little bit of red, and you can already tell like it's kind of warming up a little bit. Everywhere, every color in here is getting red added to it by a factor of whatever number we put here. So if you do like a little bit, it's like, cool, it's kind of warm. And if you do a lot, you're like, oh, it looks like sunset. And then if you do a whole lot, then it kind of ends up looking like everyone's on fire. So yeah, it's kind of cool. And then conversely, you can take red out of these colors also, right? And then it starts to cool down a little bit. There's a lot more green. And if you look at these three dots, you can kind of tell, well, what colors are the most dominant, right? The ones further to the right are. So this really comes in handy if you know how colors mix together, because then you could say add 50% red and 50% blue, and you get this nice kind of like pinkish purple color, right? Which is awesome. And then if you do the opposite, you go negative right here, and you get a very, very deep green, because green is in the lead, so to speak. But you can combine these in a lot of different ways. So if we just kind of leave that at negative 50, and I think we had blue at 50 before, we get a nice, really cool blue looking thing going on. And maybe we add some green to it and it gets a little teal. Maybe we pull green out and it's like, hey, this is mostly purple, because there's a little bit of red, but a lot of blue going on. So you can play around with this and really kind of dial stuff in. Maybe you want to like really soften it a little bit just by adding a lot of blue. You can do that too, But whatever the two colors are that are the most dominant, Illustrator is going to mix those together, and that's what will happen with the colors of your artwork. So pretty fun, a little tricky to use, but if you understand how colors mix together, then this is a lot easier. And you should have a little bit of that knowledge. So cool. That's adjust color. I'm just gonna warm it up a little bit because I like it. Boom. This next tip for Adobe Illustrator has nothing to do with color. Well, not nothing, but it's not about color. It's about value, okay? Now, if you're working in Photoshop or Procreate or something, it's pretty easy just to throw a hue and adjustment layer over your artwork, desaturate it so you can get a clear view of what's going on with the value and contrast and stuff. In Illustrator, it's not the same. So I'm going to show you two quick ways that you can achieve the same thing. So the first one we already kind of covered in a previous quick tip, which is just going up to Edit. Oh, sorry, you have to select everything first. I forgot. Going up to Edit, Edit Colors, Adjust Color Balance, and then you change this to grayscale, and then hit Preview. Oh, you got to hit Convert too. And there you go. So you can quickly kind of toggle black and white, right? Now, another way to do it, it's a little hacky, but it's much faster. And if you're anything like me, you just want to move quick and get through it. So what you can do is just take the rectangle tool, drag a big old rectangle over everything, and then you want to set its color to 100% black. So just zeros all the way down, black, true black. Hit OK, and then you're like, great, now what? Well, if you go over to the transparency tab and change its blending mode from normal to saturation, look at that. Now you have a cool little kind of like a adjustment layer over the whole thing. So you can really see what's going on and move it away and be like, okay. You can also half and half things like this, where you're like, yeah, I want him to run from black and white into color. Or you can even use it as a kind of layering effect. So here, if we start moving it backwards into the layer stack, you start to see things come to life in color. So if you want things all in black and white beneath one object, this is kind of an easy way to do it too. Yeah, so those are the two very quick ways to do a value check in Adobe Illustrator. This is truly a quick tip. It will take a minute. So did you know that the color 50% gray, the neutral, right? If you set it to overlay, it does absolutely nothing. And why would I make this a tip? Like, what is the tip here? Well, it's kind of cool because it lets you do some interesting things. So I'm going to make a square and put it over our artwork, and I'm going to set its color to exactly 50% gray. So no color information, right? And then you're like, great, it's a big gray square. Now what? Well, if we go and we set its blending mode to multiply, you're like, oh, it's dark. If you set it to screen, oh, it's bright. If you set it to overlay, nothing happens. That's because overlay is a perfect blend of multiply and screen. They're kind of like fighting each other. So brighter colors will make the image look brighter, darker colors will make it look darker. But because we have a completely neutral gray, it doesn't do a damn thing, which is kind of funny. But here's where it comes in handy. And this works just about anywhere, in Photoshop especially too. But let's say you want to add like an effect, like a texture or something, right? So I'm gonna go here to artistic, I think film grain. Yeah, film grain is here. And I'm gonna add some film grain, hit OK. Look at that. Now, if we change it back to normal mode, we just have a gray blob with a bunch of grain on it, and that's not very interesting at all. But if we set it to overlay, then all of a sudden, oh, cool. We have this like cool effects texture layer on top of our artwork, which is kind of awesome. Because sometimes it's nice to add like a little bit of texture to the artwork. And then you can always go in and adjust the opacity a little bit, bring it down to a tasteful level. Yeah, right? So it's kind of cool. And you can use this with any effect you want. So here, if I bring this back to normal, set it up to 100, and then I think, I'll go into appearance, right? And we'll get rid of you, goodbye. So now we're back to gray. You can put any texture you want over kind of gray. And again, the light parts will make it lighter, dark parts will be lighter or darker if you set it to overlay. So let's try another thing. We'll go to texture here and we'll just do like patchwork. I don't even know what that is. Oh, it's like blocks. Okay. want big blocks. Let's try 10, right? And it's a little brighter. You can tell already, but let's set it to overlay and see what happens. Okay, it's brightening things up a lot. So I'm gonna dial the opacity down a little bit, but there you go. So the reason this is a tip is because a lot of times when you want to add texture or a cool effect or something to your artwork, you have to save it, bring it into Photoshop, and then work on it there. But depending on what you're after, you might be able to get away with it all here in Illustrator and do some really fun textury things. But the lesson is 50% gray, set to overlay. It only lets any other kind of like effects shine through. The color itself is invisible, which I think is kind of neat. Well, my friend, sadly, we are at the end of our color journey together. And before we part ways, I'd like to add one more thing. Now that you understand how to see color, how to use color, and even how to build your own color palettes, I just want to remind you that color is part art and part science, with a heavy emphasis on the art. So while all of these processes and guidelines that we covered are super useful, and they will help point you in the right direction, it's important to remember that they exist to aid and not define. What I mean by that is that color is your decision and your experience. Like most other creative rules, these are meant to be challenged and even broken. 100 years from now, the colors we think we understand will mean something completely different anyway. So as you exit this course and begin to look at color in a whole new way, keep that mind open. Because color is culture, color is emotion, and color is most definitely magic. Thank you so much for enrolling in this course. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope it really kind of changes the way that you perceive color from here on out. So also do me a favor, anything that you make, use the hashtag #colorforcreatives or tag me @GunnGreg. I'd love to see what you guys build and I would happily share it. Thanks again.